Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Ladies and gentlemen, the motion picture you're about to see contains scenes so terrifying, the public must be given grave warning.
Hello and good evening. Welcome to the Bloody Binge Movie Podcast. I am your host, Sewer Dweller, and we are coming to you live from Dayton, Ohio. This week, I know it's been a few weeks since I've been on. I think the last time I was on was the wrestling podcast right before Halloween. And this is actually the first day in about 2 or 3 weeks that I've had a full voice. So thankfully my voice is back. That's why we were supposed to do Shivers last week, but unfortunately, like I said, I did not have a voice. There was no way I was going to be able to get through about 2 to 3 hours worth of information and give you the show that you deserved. So we're going to push that back. We're going to push the episode of Shivers back, the one where we were doing the Cryptids of America as usual, and we were supposed to go to Kentucky. That's going to be pushed back till January because next month for Shivers, I have a very special episode. Our first true crime episode. We are going to do the Dayton Christmas killings next month, so be prepared to tune in for that. But this week on the Bloody Binge, we are going back to 1990, and we are doing a very cult classic comedy movie, Madhouse. It stars John Larroquette who plays, of course, Dan Fielding on Night Court. Kirstie Alley, or he played it in the original Night Court, and he plays Dan Fielding again on the new Night Court. He was in Richie Rich. He was the bad guy in Richie Rich. He's been in everything. On top of that, Kirstie Alley is in the movie from Cheers. She's the one who took over Kirstie Alley took over for Shelley Long in Cheers to run the bar and become Sam's love interest, of course. And then, of course, we have and then she went on to do like Look Who's Talking and things like that. And it is directed by Tom Ropolowski. I know I'm butchering this guy's name. Made quite a few classics actually back in the day, back in the 90s. He's the writer. He wrote Madhouse. He wrote Loverboy. He is also the writer of the original Look Who's Talking and other movies like that. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But right now, like I said, coming up on the shows the next couple of weeks, we are going to go back and do Hardcore Heels again. We're going to do the first 3 episodes of Monday Night Raw. We are going to be Next week, we're going to do a Thanksgiving horror movie. I haven't decided which one yet, but we are going to do a Thanksgiving horror movie. And then after that, we are going to do 3 to 4 weeks straight of Christmas horror because I love Christmas horror. That's why we're going to do that. Um, but of course, for right now, we are going to jump into our weekly roundup of horror movie news and haunt industry news. And of course, we always start with the haunt industry news. Um, we're going to go back a couple weeks. There's not many. Needless to say, haunt season is over. There's not many horror haunt industry news stories coming out outside of who won awards and things like that. Last night, OHA, the Ohio Haunters Association, had their award ceremony right here on the Owl Light Network, actually. And I hope if you watched that, you enjoyed it. It's always fun. It's always fun to recognize people who are outstanding in the industry. Um, but for our first story, we're going to Collingswood, New Jersey for the Collingswood Haunted Hayride. They had to close after 200 plus teens disrupted the event. According to a statement from the Collingswood Police Department, at approximately 8:20 p.m. on Saturday, October 19th, 200 plus juveniles and young adults began fighting each other, running recklessly through the crowd and cutting in line for the hayride. Officers on duty at the event quickly responded, working to disperse the youths and to ensure the safety of the families attending the event. To ensure the safety of those in attendance, the decision was made to shut down the hayride and safely manage the crowds. Together, the Collingswood Police Department, event organizers, and mutual aid police agencies safely escorted families away from the chaos while simultaneously addressing and dispersing the individuals involved in the altercations. Two other area locations not engaging in Halloween events also reported incidents involving 50 to 80 juveniles, each that required officer involvement. No arrests were made, and the hayride incident remains under investigation by the department. The Collingswood High School and Middle School PTA, which organized the hayride, posted a statement to their Facebook page on October 21st. Thank you to everyone for your patience, for all of your help, for creating something special for the children and their families, and supporting the CHS CMS students and staff. Unfortunately, as everyone saw, realized, a lot of the evening was beyond what could have been expected. But with the feedback and awareness, we will review and organize to determine a way to move into next year. We appreciate your support, and it, I guess, without it, our event could not happen. Thank you on behalf of I'm going to assume it's the Collingswood Haunted Hayride Committee. So yeah, as I've said before, there is a reason why. Um, there's a reason why people, like these big events like Kings Island, all the Six Flags, Disney. Actually, Disney didn't, but a lot of these big events, banned anybody under the age of 18 from coming without an adult. There is a reason for this because these, some of these kids are out of control. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Hello, hello. Our first week at our haunt, we had a kid, and I'm telling you, this kid was probably 10, 11, 12 years old, and he caused problems immediately. Like when he walked in, you could tell this kid had an attitude, and it was almost as if his other three friends wanted to go through, wanted to have fun, and this kid was just being forced to be there, and he just didn't want to be there. So I've got a bad habit of calling people out on their bullshit, especially in the haunts, where I will, if you're being an asshole, I'm the first. I know this year I was the first seen. So if you're being an asshole, I'm going to tell you you're being a fucking asshole right now. You're not even in here 5 seconds, and I'm calling you an asshole. And you need to get your shit together before you go forward. This kid actually, he ended up swinging, like taking a swing at one of his friends. And I brought him out. I told security that he doesn't need to go through. that he's a problem already. It's the first scene, and he's a problem already. Security told me to let him go through. They tried to I forgot to shut my phone off there. They forgot, or they told me, they told him that they were going to watch him, but it didn't make any difference because by the third scene he already tried to swing at one of our actors. It's just these, at some point you got to say, hey, parents, you got to parent. It's time to parent. And if that's the case, I mean, why 200 kids are by themselves at a haunted house? I don't understand that one, but it might not be for me to understand. I know my kids. I prefer to do things with my kids. Rather than have, drop them off somewhere and have them go do what they want. My 18-year-old, he can go do whatever he wants. If he wants to go, he wants to go watch a movie, he can go watch a movie. If he wants to go do this, they like to spend time with their parents, surprisingly. And it doesn't hurt that their parents enjoy spending time with them. We used to do this thing. We can't do it no more right now because of our living situation, but we used to do this thing on Friday and Saturday nights where all four of us, the wife, the youngest, and the oldest, would all hop on the Fortnite, and we'd have a family game night. We'd play Fortnite half the night, and the kids loved it. Do things like that with your kids. Yeah, I mean, and that should be the goal of everybody's raise your kids to be good kids, but raise them to be respectful. Raise them to respect authority. 200 kids together shouldn't. We shouldn't have to worry about 200 kids together causing an issue at a haunted hayride, especially one that's meant for kids. From the sound of it, spend time with your kids. That's simple. But we're going to move on from the lecture. Universal Destinations and Experiences will debut Universal Horror Unleashed in Las Vegas in 2025, marking its first year round horror attraction. Located within Area 15, the experience will feature 4 haunted houses, including Universal Monsters, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Scarecrow the Reaping, and Blumhouse's The Exorcist Believer. Surrounding the houses are 4 sinisterly themed and immersive areas featuring unique live entertainment experiences. In select locations, guests can enjoy eerie eateries and bars featuring horror centric food and drink offerings. Plus, guests can expect a continuously updated experience with must see seasonal events and one of a kind merchandise, said Universal in its press release. I've got where did I put it? I know it's up here somewhere. Here it is. I got the website up. I'm just checking in real quick. I'm just going to see if there's anything on here worth talking about. If they haven't really done much on this except just put it up. So go to universalhorrorunleashed.com and you can see the website. There's really nothing to it. Because it's going to open next year at some point. So take a look at it. It sounds pretty awesome. Outside of I'm tired of Bloomhouse, but that's just me. So yeah, take a look at that and tell me what you think. Um, Moving down to Brazil though, during this past week's D23 Brazil, Disney Parks head John D'Amaro uh, announced new details about the upcoming Villains Land at Walt Disney World. He described the land's overarching story. In our story, a mysterious spell has been cast, summoning villains from every realm. In this land, heroes don't come to save the day, and there may not be a happily ever after. Hold on, no, there it is, right there. Um, Entertainment Weekly put out an article on this last week. We'll read from that article rather than what I copied and pasted because it's probably gonna be a little more in depth. Villain's Land will follow a mysterious spell that summons villains from every realm to the Magic Kingdom Park. We're all about to be very poor, very, very poor, unfortunate souls upon setting foot in Disney World's new Villains Land themed area, which will feature inspiration from 13 of the studio's classic villains in a twisted storyline uniting the animated baddies in one place. Disney revealed the roster of villains set for the upcoming Magic Kingdom expansion, heading to the Orlando resort with Disney Parks head Josh D'Amaro announcing even more dark details about the planned land last Saturday morning at the D23 Brazil convention. Their evil ambitions give us endless possibilities to tell new stories. This new land will be home to the villains you know and loathe. Diamaro told attendees while standing in front of an image that showed portraits of 13 characters from Disney films, including, excuse me, the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland, Jafar from Aladdin, Lady Tremaine from Cinderella, Yzma from The Emperor's New Groove, probably my favorite villain in all honesty. I do love Yzma. Cruella de Vil from 101 Dalmatians, Captain Hook from Peter Pan, Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, Mother Gothel from Tangled, Ursula from The Little Mermaid, Hades from Hercules. Oh, good lord. Chernabog from Fantasia. I didn't know Fantasia had a villain. And both versions of the Evil Queen, the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty. So it sounds like a great park. Sounds like it's going to be fun. Diamaro also revealed chilling new details about the land story, including that the narrative focus for the guest experience will follow a magic power that conjures all of the Disney villains to converge in one place. In our story, a mysterious spell has been cast, summoning villains from every realm. In this land, heroes don't come to save the day, and there may not be a happily ever after. So that sounds fun. I mean, that's something to look forward to. I think at least I'm big. I like Disney though. Definitely a Disney villains fan as well. Sorry. My voice is trying to. It's trying to get there. It's better. It's a lot better than it has been. This is probably the strongest my voice has been in a couple of weeks, but unfortunately, I do still need to take a sip of drink every once in a while. Let's see. Um, Here we go. Sorry, trying to find my next story. Let's see, top 31 haunted attractions put out by Coaster Nation. They have ranked their top 31, what they think are the top 31 best haunted attractions in the country. We're going to start with number one, Hell's Gate Haunted House in Lockport, Illinois. Number two, Woods of Terror in Greensboro, North Carolina. Number three, Everhaunt Haunted House in Angola, New York. Factory of Terror, Canton, Ohio. Fun fact about the Factory of Terror, they're actually registered as I think they are the Guinness World Record holder for longest haunt in the nation, or in the world, rather. Dark Hour from Plano, Texas. 13th Gate from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The Darkness from St. Louis, Missouri. Pennhurst Asylum in Spring City, Pennsylvania. Niles Scream Park in Niles, Michigan. Netherworld, Stone Mountain, Georgia. Netherworld, again, if you're in the haunt industry, Netherworld is like the place. It is the best place, the place you want to work. And in the industry, it's seen as one of the top haunts in the country. Nashville Nightmare from Nashville, Tennessee. Dent Schoolhouse came in number 12 from Cincinnati, Ohio. Kersey Valley, Spooky Woods in Archdale, New York. I think I've actually been to that one when I used to live on the West Coast or the East Coast. Fright Farm, Smithfield, Pennsylvania. Fear Columbus, number 15 from Columbus, Ohio. Markov's Haunted Forest in Dickerson, Maryland. Halloween Nights at Eastern State Penitentiary, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Eastern State Penitentiary is a bucket list place that I want to visit. 100 Acres Manor in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The Haunted Hotel in Louisville, Kentucky. Erebus, Pontiac, Michigan. Reaper's Revenge, Scranton, Pennsylvania. House of Torment, Austin, Texas. They come in at number 22. Number 23, Fright Worlds, America's Scream Park in Buffalo, New York. Number 24, Queen Mary's Dark Harbor, Long Beach, California. Queen Mary just came back this year, and they're already number 24. 25, Hush Haunted Attraction in Westland, Michigan. Haunted Web Scream Park in Memphis, Tennessee comes in at 26. 27, Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in Weston, West Virginia. Miller's Thriller Haunted Woods in Columbia, Tennessee at 28. Fear Factory from Salt Lake City, Utah in 29. Number 30, the Halloween Hollow, Silver Point, Tennessee. And rounding out the list at number 31, Massacre Haunted House in Montgomery, Illinois. So there's a list of all 31. Haunting is very hard on the voice, but actually my voice was pretty good this year from haunting. I got sick right before Halloween and the whole house was sick actually. And I had like basically it was seasonal allergies and that, and it just did damage on my voice, the sinus draining. Um to the point where, like I said, I am just now, almost what, 2 weeks later, I'm just now getting my voice completely back. It's still, like I said, I'm still coughing a little bit. Um, I have I have liquid refreshment beside me if I need it, but like I said, just bear with me, please. Um, so yeah, there's your 31 top 31 haunted houses. According to Coaster, what was it? Coaster Logic, I think. I can't remember what it was. It was Coaster something. Um, so now we move on to our final horrors or haunted house haunt industry news story, and we are going. For those who don't know, one of the big things in the haunted house industry now is opening for Christmas, opening for other holidays like Hell's Dungeon will open for Christmas. I think we're open on the 13th and 14th next month. Then we're going to open again in February for Valentine's Day, and I think we're open on the 14th. I think the 14th is a Saturday, because I think we get another Friday the 13th in February. But we are going to be open on Valentine's Day, I believe. And what Hell's Dungeon does is we do a package where you can do a murder mystery dinner and go through the haunt. Um, so keep an eye out for that. I know the 13th next month we're going to be open on Friday the 13th in December. That is our cinema night, and then the 14th is the Christmas haunt. I have a very special character designing for the Christmas haunts that I think is going to be very fun. I have a couple more ideas for characters I'd like to play, but I think this year, because we're only open for 2 nights, I have I have a character. I have a character for this year. Um, so holiday haunted houses in around the country that are going to be open in December. This is a list that basically, if you're going to be open, make sure you just tell people you're open. This list is basically one of those, hey, let us know you're going to be open and then we'll make the list. Yeah, I Cupid was fun. I did not wear that outfit. I wore the leotard, the pink leotard for the actual haunt, but I had to put a toga around me because I tried to find some like underwear, like boxers, Valentine's style boxer shorts, because that leotard kind of showed everything. And yeah, we had kids coming through in that, so I wanted to put something covering up my crotch area, if you will, and couldn't find anything. So we had to make. We made myself a toga to wear. Still had the wig, still had the weird ass makeup, and the leotard or the onesie, if you will. But yeah, we did have to change it up a little bit. The character this year, I don't know what I'm doing for Valentine's yet. I don't know if I'm doing Cupid again this year or not. But the character for Christmas, I've already talked with Raz about it, and he's on board. I'm just trying to figure out the makeup. But here are I think there's 85. I think is what they said. Um, haunts that are basically listed on this website that are going to be open for Christmas this year. Atrox Factory in Leeds, Alabama. East Aboga Manor in East Aboga, Alabama, and Spook Trail Haunted House in Quinton, Alabama. It does go out alphabetical by state. I'll try to get this as quickly as I can. Let's see. Arkansas, you have Asylum X in Fort Smith and Fukalore Slaughterhouse in Gravesville, Arkansas. Next up is California. California, you got 4 that made the list. All Saints Lunatic Asylum Haunted Attraction in Apple Valley. DeSoto Asylum in Needles. Haunted Holidays Car Wash, Anaheim, California. They're to be announced. I guess I should read the dates. High Desert Haunted House in Apple Valley, California, on the 13th and 14th. Moving on to Colorado, I'm not going to go back through and read everything else, but most of them are open between the 13th and the 14th. I think the only one that's open after that is the 2 in Arkansas. Asylum X is open on the 20th and 21st. Folklore Slaughterhouse is the 21st and the 28th. Moving on to Colorado, you have 1. Colorado has 1. 13th floor Haunted House, Denver. They're going to be open the 13th through the 15th, so 3 days, one whole weekend. Moving down to Florida. Florida's got 5. 13th floor Haunted House, Jacksonville, Florida, from the 13th to the 15th. Blackwater Grave in Fort Meade, Florida, from December 7th through the December 7th and December 14th. Creepy Hollow Woods in Jay, Florida, from December 13th to the 14th. Sir Henry's Haunted Trail in Plant City, Florida, December 6th, December 7th, and then the 13th through the 15th. Tales of Terror in Astatula, Florida, will be open from the 14th through the 15th and the 20th through the 21st. Moving on to Georgia, Folklore Haunted House in Ackworth, Georgia. It will be open on the 7th of December. Paranoia Haunted House in Canton, Georgia, will be open on the 14th. Screams Haunted Experience in Hoboken, Georgia, December 13th. And then Wicked South Productions in Pembroke, Georgia, will be the 13th or the 14th. I think the easiest way to do this is unless I say a different date, they're open the 13th and the 14th. Because I think a majority of these will be open on the 13th. It might actually just be easier just to read off what's there, and you can, if you look up the dates from your favorite haunted houses if you hear them open for Christmas. Moving on to Illinois, you have 13th floor haunted house in Chicago, Area 66 haunted school in Livingston, Illinois, Dungeon of Doom haunted house in Zion, Illinois, Factory of Fear in Moline, Insanity Haunted House in Peru, Illinois, and Massacre Haunted House in Montgomery, Illinois. Moving on down the line to Indiana. House of Anguish at the Culbertson Mansion in New Albany, Indiana. Malice Manor in Clarksville, and Nightmare on Edgewood in Indianapolis. I need to get out the Nightmare on Edgewood because they've gotten so many rave reviews. Iowa. We're going to go to Hillside of Hell in Glenwood, Iowa, and Slaughterhouse Haunted Attraction in Des Moines. Kentucky, the only one listed in Kentucky is the Haunted Hotel in Louisville. Louisiana, we have Necro Manor Haunted House in Bossier City, I'm assuming, and New Orleans Nightmare in, you guessed it, New Orleans, Louisiana. Maine, you have 1. You have Maniac Manor in Bangor. Maryland, you have Bennett's Curse is going to be open in Baltimore, Harrah's Nightmare in Westminster, and Laurel's House of Horror in Laurel, Maryland. Moving on down to Michigan, or moving on up to Michigan. Michigan's got quite a few. Azra, Chamber of Horrors Haunted House in Madison Heights. Deranged Haunted House in Romulus. Factory of the Dead in Saginaw. Hinterland Haunted Attraction in Ashley, Michigan. Rotten Manor in Holly, Michigan. And finally, the Scream Machine in Taylor, Michigan. So Michigan, you got a bunch of haunts to check out for Christmas. Factory of the Dead is going to be open from the 20th to the 21st and the 27th through the 28th. Actually, Hinterland Haunted Attraction, they're going to be open in November. November 23rd and 24th, the 29th and 30th. They actually got a lot of dates. December 1st, December 6th, 7th, and 8th, the 13th through the 15th, and the 20th through the 26th. So they're going to be open like every weekend from the 23rd of November all the way through the 22nd of December. Moving on to Missouri, the Darkness in St. Louis will be open on the 14th. Terror on Route 66 in Sullivan. Moving down to Mississippi, we have Terror on the Coast in Gulfport, Mississippi. New Hampshire, we have Bright Kingdom in Nashua, New Hampshire. They're the only ones that you're going to have or that are on this list. New Jersey, 13th Hour Haunted House in Wharton and Brighton Asylum in Passaic. Going right next door to New Jersey, we have New York. They've got 5. Seven Gates Scream Park in Niagara Falls. Bayville Scream Park in Bayville, New York. Chambers of Hell in good Lord. Hauppauge, Hauppauge. I cannot say that name. I might summon the devil if I say that name. Everhaunt, Angola, New York, and Terrorfield in Clyde, New York. Moving down to North Carolina, Extreme Fear Scaregrounds in Kinston, the Haunted Forest at Panic Point in Youngsville, Pinhead's Graveyard in Canton, North Carolina, Spooky Bottom Haunted Trail in Seagrove, North Carolina, and finally the Woods of Terror in Greensboro, North Carolina. Now moving to my home state of Ohio, well, where I live, not where I was actually born, but where I live now. So I guess technically it is my home state. Akron Haunted Schoolhouse in, you guessed it, Akron, Ohio. Blood Prison in Mansfield. I have been dying to go check out Blood Prison. If you don't yet, go check out. Her name is 6'7" Haunt Chick on TikTok. She is She plays the warden's widow at Blood Prison. Blood Prison is actually set in the Ohio Reformatory in Mansfield, where they filmed Shawshank Redemption. It is actually terrifying during the daylight. I cannot imagine what it looks like at night. The Dent Schoolhouse in Cincinnati will be open for Christmas. Fear Columbus, The Haunted Farm in Pleasantville, Nightmare Manor in Middletown, and The Nightmare at Stagecoach Hollow in Liverpool. Moving across the country to Oregon, The Fear PDX, Portland, Oregon, Nightmare Chamber Haunted House in Medford, and Nightmares on the Rogue, also in Medford. Moving to Pennsylvania, we have Castle Blood in Monison, Pennsylvania, Demon House in Monongahela. Good Lord. Fear at the Farm in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, Field of Screams, Pennsylvania, Mountville. Field of Screams is another one I've been wanting to go to. Hidden Screams Haunted Attraction in Lewiston, Kim's Crypt Haunting Mill Scream Park in Spring Grove, and Lincoln Mill Haunted House in Philadelphia. Moving on down to South Carolina, Dark Castle Haunted Attraction in Elgin, Deceased Farm in Lexington, and Nightmare Dungeon Haunted Attraction in Greenville, South Carolina. All will be open for the holidays. We are down to Tennessee. In Tennessee, we have Dread Hollow, Chattanooga, Frightworks in Powell, Haunted Web Scream Park in Memphis, Nashville Nightmare in, you guessed it, Nashville, Tennessee, and The Unknown Haunt in Clarksville, Tennessee. Moving down to Texas. You got the 13th floor haunted house in Houston, Dark Hour haunted house in Plano, House of Torment in Austin, Moxley Manor in haunted house in Bedford, and finally Terror Isle in Texas City. Again, I'm pretty sure there's a lot more that are going to be open. This is just the ones that were listed on this website. Over to my birth state of Virginia. Milltown Haunt in Leavittsville, Virginia, Frightmare in Chesapeake, Red Vein Haunted House in Ashland, Virginia, Spooky Acres Haunted House in Norfolk, Virginia. Do not call it Norfolk, it is Norfolk. And Terror Manor in Roanoke. Everybody wants to call it Norfolk, Virginia. It is not Norfolk, Virginia. I am from Norfolk, Virginia. Please call it Norfolk. Washington State. You have the Cinema of Horrors Haunted House in Kelso, Washington. West Virginia, you have Fear on the Farm in Winfield and Fright Nights in Daniels. And finally, rounding out the list, Wisconsin, you have Dark Chambers in Hazel Green, Wisconsin. So hopefully you guys get to go check out a holiday haunted house or Christmas haunted house. I don't know why I love holiday or Christmas horror movies. Holiday horror movies are just so much fun to watch. And it was fun. Like last year was the first time I've ever done a Christmas haunt working at Hell's Dungeon. And I'm not gonna lie, I had a fucking blast. I had a blast doing it. So get out, check them out. But that's gonna do it for the haunt industry portion of this show. Now we're gonna move on to some horror movie news, and there's actually quite a bit of horror movie news. We'll try to get through what I can in about 24 minutes because I want to cut it off at the hour point. But our first story has been getting some mixed reviews, honestly, online. Because Lady Gaga will be joining Jenna Ortega in Wednesday season 2. This article comes from Bloody Disgusting. And they write, fresh off the Joker sequel, Entertainment Weekly reports today that the singer/actor Lady Gaga has signed on to star in the upcoming second season of Netflix's Wednesday. Entertainment Weekly notes in their exclusive report that full details of Gaga's role are still unknown, though the singer-actress is currently filming the show in Europe. Stay tuned for more. Wednesday season 2 will arrive on Netflix sometime in 2025. Pardon me. My guess is going to be right around Halloween like it was last time. Jenna Ortega stars in the upcoming sequel or second season as Wednesday, with Luis Guzman returning as Gomez and Catherine Zeta-Jones back as Morticia. The Wednesday season 2 cast also includes Joy Sunday as Bianca, Joanna Lumley as Grandmama, Emma Myers as Enid, Steve Buscemi as Barry Dort, Billy Piper as Capri, Thandie, I can't know if it's Thandie Newton or Thandoe Newton as Dr. Fairborn, along with Hunter Duan, Victor Dorobantu, I'm going to summon the devil with these names, Musa Mustafa, Luyanda Unadi Lewis Niawo. I apologize if I'm butchering anyone's name because I know I am. Georgie Farmer, Isaac Ordonez, Evie Templeton, Owen Painter, and Noah Taylor. Additionally, guest stars for season 2 include Jamie McShane, Francis O'Connor, Haley Joel Osment, Heather Matazzaro, Junis Suotamo, Fred Armisen, and Christopher Lloyd. Of particular note here, Lloyd, of course, played Uncle Fester in the live-action Addams Family movies from the 90s, while Armisen plays Fester in the Wednesday TV series. Wednesday is described as a sleuthing, supernaturally infused mystery charting Wednesday Addams' year as a student at Nevermore Academy. The series follows Wednesday's attempts to master her emerging psychic ability, thwart a monstrous killing spree that has terrorized the local town, and solve the supernatural mystery that embroiled her parents 25 years ago. all while navigating her new and very tangled relationships. So yeah, I don't know. I love the first season. I loved the first season of Wednesday. I thought it was great. I know there's a lot of people online that are not very happy with Lady Gaga signing on to be a part of season 2. Um, so we'll see how that works out, but I know a lot of people are not very happy about it. Um, Actually, we're gonna move on to our next story. This is a story that I probably should have started with. If as a horror fan, if you have lived under a rock, guys, give me just 1 second. Sorry about that, guys. I had some technical difficulties on this side. But yeah, this is a story that we should have started with. But I know a lot of people already know about this. But if you've been living under a rock in the horror community, we lost a big, big part of it this week. Tony Todd passed away at the age of 69 years old. He, of course, is most well known for playing Candyman, the principal in Final Destination, and a bunch of other roles going through. I think one of my favorite roles of his was when he played Ben in the remake of Night of the Living Dead, which I much as I love the original Night of the Living Dead, I think the remake is so much better. Um, he of course passed away this week. We do want to send our condolences to his family and the horror community because I've met Tony Todd so many times at conventions, and he was always one of the nicest people there, like in the room. He was always the nicest guy in the room. Um, Also the largest, almost always the largest guy in the room. He was big. Um, and I hope everybody got to meet him at conventions and that because, like I said, he was so nice. Like I one of the things I regret is I've only ever got to meet Sid Haig. Before he passed away, I got to meet him one time at a convention, and that was way back in like 2006. Um, and I didn't get to meet him again until of course, he passed away a few years ago. Before I think he passed away before COVID. Um, but we do want to say rest in peace, Tony Todd. Um, when speaking at Salem Horror Fest in 2023, the actor traced his affection for acting back to a high school English teacher who introduced him to William Shakespeare's The Tempest. It was like a light bulb went off. From that moment on, I knew my whole life would be dedicated to portraying deep, enriched characters and representing my people that didn't come along with me or were stuck in a groove. So it's not just me sitting up here, it's everybody I ever knew. Of course, some of the other notable genre credits he has was Wishmaster, The Crow. He of course was in the first two movies of the Hatchet series. Um, Hellfest, Dead of Summer, and MTV VH1's Scream, which I never did get around to watching. He also did numerous voice acting roles, including Darkseid in the DC animated movie universe, and Venom in Insomniac's games Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Um, But yeah, but yeah, rest in peace, Tony Todd. You will be missed. Uh, but like I said, that's something I think everybody who's, if you're listening to a horror movie podcast, you're a big enough horror movie fan to have already noticed this. So let's move on. This is going to be an interesting one. I didn't read this whole article yet, but the title got me. Silent Night, Deadly Night. We're reimagining the Christmas slasher classic. 40 years after parents picketed outside of theaters following the release of the initial Santa slasher movie in the franchise, we're excited to announce today that Cineverse has acquired the global rights to a new Silent Night, Deadly Night film. Deadline broke the news today. Fresh off the release of Terrifier 3, Bloody Disgusting will be producing the upcoming reboot of the franchise that will be written and directed by Mike P. Nelson, Wrong Turn and VHS 85, and produced by Scott Schneid and Dennis Whitehead, executive producers of the original 1984 TriStar film alongside Jamie R. Thompson. Brandon Hill and Brad Miska from Terrifier 3 will oversee for Cineverse and will executive produce alongside Eric Opeka and Yolanda Messias, I think. In the original horror classic, little Billy witnessing his parents getting killed by Santa after being warned by his senile grandfather that Santa punishes those who are naughty. Now Billy is 18 and out of the orphanage and has just become Santa himself. When it was released in 1984, the first Silent Night, Deadly Night quickly became the most controversial film of the year. In a series of letters, parents demanded the film be pulled from theaters. TriStar, the film's original distributor, responded to all the outrage by doing just that, an act that would ensure Silent Night, Deadly Night's place in the halls of horror film infamy. So apparently TriStar did pull the movie from theaters. In an instant, Silent Night, Deadly Night transformed from just another slasher film to a veritable cult classic. The very people who sought to banish it from existence, serving to make it one of the most must-see horror films of the entire decade. It's almost like that thing they tell you when you have kids is you don't want them to date somebody, pretend you like that person. Because if you don't like them, it's going to push them closer together. The new Silent Night, Deadly Night goes into production soon. It is currently slated for a late 2025 theatrical release. I have always been a huge fan of Silent Night, Deadly Night, and can't wait to bring Mike's vision to to fans of iconic slashers, said Cineverse executive producer of Acquisitions, Brandon Hill. As we have seen this year, there continues to be incredible demand for independent horror films. You think they're the best, and we believe this can deliver strong audiences from theatrical to home entertainment and streaming. So basically, it's almost as if Terrifier 3 got released as an independent horror film and made $50 million at the fucking box office. So let's go ahead and remake a couple more. I'm okay with it. I know Silent Night, Deadly Night has a cult following. But Cineverse and Bloody Disgusting did a really, really good job with Terrifier 3. I think it's fine. And this is speaking as somebody who is against remakes. But I think currently I'm just against Blumhouse remakes. Like I know they've been talking for a while about redoing the Blair Witch, and I've said it before on here. I've said it, and I'll say it again on here. Don't remake Blair Witch until you fucking pay Mike, Heather. Oh, good Lord, I forgot his name. Josh. Mike, Heather, and Josh for the original film. They deserve a lot more than they were paid. They deserve royalties. They deserve to own their own names and everything. They essentially wrote the film for you. But moving on, we're going to stick with some remakes because brand new street trash movie melts the rich on digital November 19th. That's right. They have remade the 1987 classic Street Trash. and apparently it's coming out on the 19th. Um, I like Street Trash. I like the original. It was actually pretty fun to watch. Bloody Disgusting and Cineverse will release the horror film Street Trash, a brand new spiritual sequel to the 1980s cult horror classic on digital outlets beginning November 19th. A reimagining of the 1987 classic Street Trash is directed by Ryan Kruger, who also co-wrote the film with James C. Williamson, based on the original Street Trash movie by Roy Frumkes and Jim Morrow. Kruger also stars in the film alongside Sean Cameron Michael, Donna Cormack Thompson, Joe Vaz, Lloyd Martinez Newkirk, Shirai Meyer, Gary Green, and Warwick Greer. In the year 2050, global economic turmoil has destroyed the middle class in Cape Town, South Africa, which is now divided between the ultra-rich and the displaced. Ronald and a group of fellow houseless friends uncover a plot by the local government to wash away the homeless population with a sinister chemical agent called B. Now they must risk everything to expose the truth and resist a society that's determined to erase them. Our reimagining of Street Trash takes place in Cape Town, South Africa, where the growing divide between rich and poor has changed the world as we know it, Kruger previews. I was a huge fan of the original Street Trash when I was a kid, and I couldn't be more thrilled to introduce a whole new generation to the melted gonzo goodness that made the original such a classic. So yeah, if you're not a fan of gory, I wouldn't watch this movie. The original Street Trash was very, very gory. Let's see, shot entirely on 35 millimeter film. 35 millimeter. The film is produced by Justin Martell and Matt Manzuritis of U.S.-based studio Not the Funeral Home. That apparently is the studio that puts out Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs. With original Street Trash producer Roy Frumkes and director Jim Morrow, along with the Bad Dragon and genre film restoration outfit Vinegar Syndrome, all serving as executive producers. So yeah, if they film this on 35 millimeter, that's gonna look freaking awesome. Hopefully they also keep it down where where it's practical effects versus CGI, because I'm sick of CGI. And then this new AI, I think I've seen online today. People are bitching about, I guess, the new Coke ad, the new Coke truck ad is completely AI now, and people are having a fit about it. Let's see. Yeah, then we already talked about it. This might be our last story because we're coming up on the hour point. But Robert Englund cast in latest from the director of Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. This is from the iHorror.com page. Robert Englund said recently that he won't return to his role as Freddy Krueger because I'm too old. But that doesn't mean he's retiring. Variety reports today that the actor has been cast as Cricket in a new horror film from the makers of Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. But I still got to watch the sequel to that. The sequel looks so much better than the original. The Nightmare on Elm Street star will join Richard Blake in a new fairy tale horror movie called Pinocchio Unstrung. The film will be directed by Reese Frake Waterfield and produced by Scott Jeffrey, two filmmakers creating a catalog of horror films with characters made famous by Walt Disney. Not only is the script dark, twisted, and gory, it's also at times very funny, Brake said in a statement. I gotta look this up real quick because we've done another movie by that Reese. What was his name? Robert Englund. Reese Breakwater. But we've done a movie of his on the podcast. So give me 1 minute. I'm trying to remember which one it was. Let's see. Director. The Killing Tree. The Killing Tree. We did that back in July for our Christmas in July episode, and it's on Tubi if you really want to watch it, but I don't suggest it. Um, that one and Rollerblade are the two that I think so far are the absolute worst fucking movies I've watched on this podcast so far. Um, but moving on with the article, not only is the script dark, twisted, and gory, it's also at times very funny. Brake said in a statement. Todd Masters and his team have created incredible practical effects. Audiences are in for a crazy ride. I'm looking at a picture. I don't know if this is the concept of Pinocchio or the actual puppet they're using. This is pretty fucking creepy. And I'm gonna see if I can. What is a JPEG? So I can probably check this out, guys. Hold on. I want you guys to see this. Where did it go? I saved it. Where the fuck did it go? 1 second, guys. I know I saved it. Let me try this again. Because this is creepy. This thing is. All right, let's see if we can find it. There it is. Just I want you guys to see. This is the picture of the puppet. Like that's the I don't know if that's concept or what, but that's fucking terrifying. Where's the article? Masters says that he loved the original story from the 1880s and is expected to join this production. This version is still a little puppet's pursuit to becoming a boy, but the way he becomes one is extremely gnarly and frankly very fun. This film will add another chapter to Frank Waterfield's ever-building madcap universe of childhood characters available to the public domain. Other than his Winnie the Pooh movies, he has also made films based on Bambi and Peter Pan. So yeah, Robert Englund is going to basically play Jiminy Cricket in that new movie. Anybody's watching, what do you think of this puppet? That thing just looks terrifying to me. Um, just yeah, kind of makes me want to watch this movie, even though Killer Tree was pretty bad in the original. The original Winnie the Pooh Blood and Guts wasn't very good either. Uh, Chaos Gamer Alec, yes, very, very, very creepy. Um, but guys, we're coming up on the 1 hour mark. We're going to go ahead and call the news there. We'll start doing a little more horror movie news in the coming weeks because, again, the with the haunt season winding down, the only thing left until next year right now is the Christmas haunts and the Valentine's haunts. So we'll focus a little more on our horror movie news in the upcoming weeks. Because again, I'm going to start now that haunt season's over. I should be able to make this a little more regularly. Fridays at 4 p.m. I was a little late today because I was still watching the movie. I'm not gonna lie, I was still watching the movie. So like I said, we'll try to make this a little more regular from here on out to where it's going to be every day at 4, every Friday at 4. We still got another new episode of Hardcore Heels coming in the within the next week or two. For the first 3 episodes of Monday Night Raw. It's okay. Hello again, Friday. We like I said, we got the first 3 episodes of Raw coming up on Hardcore Heels. As I said at the beginning of the show, I did have to push back the Kentucky cryptids till January. Again, I did not have a voice last week, so there was no way I was going to be able to come on here and podcast for 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours, with no voice. But we're going to push that one back to January, as in December, we're going to have a very special episode of Shivers. It is going to be our first true crime episode of Shivers, and we are going to dive into the Dayton Christmas killings from 1992. It is a very interesting story I heard on another podcast a couple years ago that I've looked into and I've studied a little bit of it. And it's a solved murder. It's not. This isn't going to be like a who did it, who done it, or anything. But the story that these teenagers did, it is basically it's almost like a killing, more like a spree killer than it was a serial killer. But these kids went on a 2-day spree, just killing about, I think it was like 5 or 6 people almost. And a lot of the reasoning behind it is because they were bored. So we'll be looking into that for Christmas this year. Excuse me. As I said, it basically a spree killing that took place from Christmas Eve all the way through. Basically, it started Christmas Eve and went through Christmas Day. And how they were caught is going to blow your mind. So, guys, let's go ahead. Like I said, we're going to go ahead and take our break now. When we come back, in exactly 3 minutes, we will be deep diving Madhouse, cult comedy classic from 1990, a movie that was one of my favorites growing up. So I might have a little bit of a bias on it. But guys, we'll talk to you here in a little bit. But for right now, let's pay some bills.
Greetings and shabebans. We are the Retro Reductibus Cephala Podcast, a long-form bi-weekly show that celebrates all the things that made growing up awesome.
Well, that sounds good, but I don't know what all those words mean.
I think what Parasite Steve's trying to say is that on Retro Reductibus, we explore a range of retro goodness, from toys, video games, and movies, to cartoons, and even snacks and school lunches.
Oh.
And we do it all with a positive spin, a slew of killer guests, and some very adult language.
And you know what else is cool?
No.
This crazy show is part of the Your King Podcast Network with new episodes every Technical Tuesday.
What's that?
And if waiting 2 weeks for a new episode gives you a sad, know that we drop bonus episodes all the time, like the off-format Crow's Nest and an interview series we call The Brick.
You can listen to Retro Octopus on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any app that's cool enough to carry the only show that celebrates all the things that make growing up awesome.
And we're back. Hope everybody enjoyed that 3-minute break. This is, of course, the Bloody Binge Movie Podcast. I am your host, Sewer Dweller. And this week we are doing Madhouse from 1990. Madhouse was written by Tom Ropolowski. He also he's only directed five things, but he did write and direct Madhouse. But he also wrote and directed Look Who's Talking. I'm sorry. He wrote Look Who's Talking Now. He wrote and directed Look Who's Talking Now. My fault. The one with the dogs. Um, but he also wrote an episode of Scarecrow, Mrs. King. He wrote the movie Blind Date with Bruce Willis, the movie that gave Bruce Willis his start. A couple episodes of Simon and Simon. The movie Loverboy, which is another cult classic that I don't know how many people remember Loverboy, but I remember watching it because my mom used to love those kind of movies. Uh, and then kind of fell off for a while there. Nothing really major. The last thing he wrote was in 2016. It was called something called 7D, one episode. Seems to still be alive, so I don't know what happened to him. Let me get to the movie itself on IMDb. The movie stars John Larroquette, most famous, of course, most popular, of course, for playing Dan Fielding from Night Court in the original and the new ones. Um, yeah. Let's see. Like I said, in the new episodes of Night Court, the new series where God, what's her name? I can't remember her name. The girl who plays Bernadette from Big Bang Theory was Harry Stone's daughter. Of course, well known for being the narrator for the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I believe he was the original for the original. Let me get down here. Yep, the original narrator for honestly for every Texas Chainsaw Massacre from the looks of it, even the remakes. Like I said, of course, the most famous thing he's known for is as Dan Fielding in Night Court. Was on an episode of Mork and Mindy. The movie Summer Rental, Meatballs 3. Second Sight is another movie. If I can find Second Sight, guys, we're gonna do Second Sight on here. That is a fantastic movie where John Larroquette plays a private investigator, and he's working with what was it, Melky, I think, from Perfect Strangers. Bronson Pinchot. It was him and Bronson Pinchot were in it. And Bronson Pinchot, let me get down here to I realize Bronson Pinchot's been in a lot. I could be wrong. He might not have been in Perfect Strangers. Let me get down here. Plays Bobby, in the in Second Sight. He plays Bronson Pinchot plays a psychic who helps John Larroquette's character solve mysteries. I believe it also has what is Second Sight? Let me get onto the movie itself. That might help me a little bit. Stuart Pankin playing a PhD that's actually studying Bobby. It's a great movie. I haven't seen that movie in years, so if I find that, we're going to be doing that on the podcast, just because I like Second Sight. But he's been in a lot. Like I said, John Larroquette's been on Blind Date. He's one of them guys that if you seen him, you knew who he was. But yes. Moving on, also stars. John Larroquette plays Mark Bannister. Kirstie Alley plays Jesse Bannister, and if you don't know who Kirstie Alley was, and I'm talking like late '80s, early '90s, Kirstie Alley, she was gorgeous, and until watching this movie again, I forgot just how gorgeous she was. Kirstie Alley, of course, came on everybody's radar when she took over in Cheers. She was in Cheers. She took over for when Shelley Long left the show. She took over as the owner of the bar, and she was also Sam's. What do you call it? She was Rebecca Howe. She was also Sam's love interest near the end. You also got her in all the Look Who's Talking movies. Summer School with God, what's his name? Gibbs. He plays Gibbs on NCIS. Mark Harmon. Um, she's in that. She's. If you don't know who Kirstie Alley is, you really need to go back to the '90s and watch some of her movies because she was pretty funny to a point. She does a really good job in this film as well. Playing the slowly but surely losing her mind Jessie Bannister. We've also got Alison LaPlaca playing Claudia, Jessie's sister. Um, she's known for Fletch. She was in 3 episodes of Friends as Joanna. She was in an episode of Mom. 2014 was the last thing she's really been doing in the industry. Here and there, player. It looks like on a lot of a lot of TV shows, she plays one person. Like for one episode, the Jackie Thomas Show, Open House, she was on for a while. Duet. Um, Basically, like I said, a lot of stuff like that. Uh, we also have Jessica Lundy, who plays Bernice. You'll meet Bernice, and I don't know how much you guys are gonna like Bernice. But the one thing I've seen, like she's still doing stuff. I think 2022 is the last thing she was in. But one of the things I noticed going through here is another movie in the 80s that I absolutely loved. Her third movie that she ever did was, well, Madhouse was her fifth, but her third movie she ever did was Caddyshack 2. She plays Kate Hartunian, Jackie Mason's daughter in the movie. So keep that in mind. She's, like I said, 2 episodes Northern Exposure, 6 episodes in the Carol Burnett Show, and just a bunch of on and off stuff here and there. Like I said, I don't see anything major under here, but she's that. John Deal plays Fred. I think John Deal was actually one of the bigger names, if I remember right. He's in The Clients. He's in this a modern TV show called Dark Winds as BJ Vines. And just again a lot of on and off stuff. The Obama Effect. Burn Notice. It was in the fall of Sam Axe. Which Burn Notice was such a good show. But that's who we got. We got Wayne Tippett as Grindle. I think he's one of the bigger stars. JFK, Dancer, Texas, Population 81. But we'll come back to it after we do the movie. Again, it was released in 1990. I watched this a lot growing up. And I used to love this movie. So really for me, this is going to be a does it hold up 24 or 34 years later. Of course, Kirstie Alley has passed away in real life, or not real life, but Kirstie Alley has left this world after her TV show. But we open to the legendary Metro Goldwyn Mayer MGM, and everybody knows this opening. Even if you watch movies now, you probably still know this opening. It is the opening with the lion greeting us to the movie, followed by the Orion Pictures image, which everybody, again, if you watch movies back in those days, you know what Orion Pictures is as well. But we get a quick animated opening, and there's some catchy late 80s, early 90s pop rock. It kind of almost sounds like a Huey Lewis in the news style music playing. But the movie itself opens up, and it's just a wedding picture of Mark and Jesse Bannister. We pan to the left as Jesse is basically leaving the bathroom. And anybody who lived in the 80s and 90s knows this next sentence that came out of his mouth. Mark reminds her to jiggle the handle. She goes back, she jiggles the handle, and she asks why they don't get that fixed. And he tells her that they have $8 left to their name after the down payment on the house. Okay. Now, a little bit of plumbing lessons. Fixing a jiggling handle. If you have to jiggle the handle, it is normally a very easy, very cheap fix, because normally all you have to do is replace the flapper or replace the chain on the flapper. In 2024, that is like a $10 to $12 fix at most, and something that is very easy to do, that even people with the lowest amount of DIY knowledge can easily do. So let that sink in. Let's let that sink in as we talk about the toilet situation. She pretty much goes, "Okay, I guess we're jiggling the handle from now." And I already read about all that. She crawls into bed, and he starts cuddling up to her and kissing on her. She reminds him. Excuse me. She reminds him that they do have to go to work, and he tells her, "I am working." She asks him, "Do you really want to do this?" And he explains to her that since they don't live in an apartment anymore, they can do whatever the fuck they want. And that makes him want to buy handcuffs. She straddles him as apparently this turns her on. Like I said, she straddles him and says she can't believe they got in. They're making out the entire time. They're kissing in between talking and that. He tells her there was only a 5-minute dip in the market, and she praises him for being right on top of it. He tells her that he wants to buy an oversized, vulgar television for the living room, and she wants tacky pink flamingos for the lawn. The entire time, they're essentially dry humping each other. Camera cuts outside, and we can just assume that they had loud sex because it cuts back, and it's Mark, and he's sitting on one of them old 90s, old late 80s, early 90s workout machines. Again, anybody who lived in that era knows exactly what I'm talking about. And we cut to Mark working out. Jesse comes in with some mail, and she says that, she's telling him that it was all postmarked 3 weeks ago. She asks Mark if he called the post office, and he says, "Yeah, I called them. I've sent them forms and sacrificed small animals in front of the mailbox." Kids in 1990, you kind of had to do that shit to get anything from the post office. Jesse asks who they know in New Jersey. Mark asks to see the letter, and she asks, "Could it be one of your old girlfriends?" And he gets excited and goes, "Hey, maybe." Mark takes the letter and gets excited because it is from his cousin Fred. Jesse says, "Well, you never mentioned a cousin Fred." Mark says, "Well, of course I did. They used to call him Ever Ready Freddy." Mark reads the letter and says, "Hey, guess what? He and his wife want to spend their vacation with us." Jesse's like, "Well, that sounds fun. When?" "Today." Day one flashes across the screen. So basically, because the mail wasn't delivered for 3 weeks, I guess the letter was delivered 3 weeks ago, and his cousin and his wife are coming to stay with him. So day one flashes across the screen as the garage door opens to their vehicles, and they both have BMWs. And just to show how yuppie and douchey they are, his license plate says mine, and her license plate says hers. Jesse asks if Fred and his wife wouldn't be more comfortable staying in a hotel, and Mark says, it's just house guests. It'll be fun. And she does not look too convinced. So we cut to the office, and Mark is talking with his buddy Wes. Actually, I probably should have brought this up. He is played by famous 1990s, I guess 80s and 90s stand-up comedian Dennis Miller. Again, for those who weren't back in that generation, Dennis Miller was kind of what we would call Bill Maher today. A very kind of like politically influential comedian from back in the 90s. But Mark says, come on, it's only for 5 days. And Wes tells him, well, Chernobyl only happened in 5 minutes and it didn't come into LAX at rush hour. And my only response to that was, you have a point. 1 point to Wes. Wes asks the secretary if the Grendel meeting has started yet, and Mark tells him he'll give it 3 minutes. Wes is like, what do you mean 3 minutes? Martinson's gonna woof it, he says. Mark says right now he's asking everyone to turn to page 6 in their prospectus. He says, you changed my mind. Mark says, you changed my mind. 1 minute. Wes asks what's wrong with page 6, and Mark tells him he's suggesting a major investment into slaughter security. Wes is basically like, okay, and? So Grendel caught his second wife in the merger mode with a Slaughter Junior executive. The second he says that, the door bursts open as Grendel is storming away from Martinson as he begs him to let him work something out. Grendel tells him to have his car pulled around, to be brought around, and tells Martinson that he wants 12% growth with a company that doesn't sleep with his wife. Before the elevator door closes, Mark stops it, looks at him, and tells Grendel that he can get him that. Grendel asks, who the hell are you? And Mark introduces himself and tells Martinson that, and Martinson says he's one of their brightest stockbrokers. Mark tells Grendel that Martinson was somewhat adventurous, but he can guarantee him that Mark can build Grendel a portfolio that's not only conservative but aggressive. Mark tells him he'll be earning 14% in 3 months. Grendel is a little shocked and impressed at 14% and agrees to give the company one last chance as he puts a lit cigar in his mouth inside of an elevator. Now, kids, back in the 80s and 90s, you could smoke indoors. Restaurants used to have smoking sections where if you wanted to smoke a cigarette while you're eating, that's where you went and sat. So needless to say, every time I went out to dinner or went out for food, as a kid, we always sat in the smoking section because my mother smoked, my grandmother smoked, my grandfather smoked, my father smoked for a little bit, and so on and so forth. So after the elevator doors close, Martinson looks at Mark and tells him that he wants proposals for his new portfolio on his desk by closing, and Mark just hands him a folder that was already prepared. Mark smiles, and Wes tells him he can't believe he wants to get in bed with Bob Grendel. Mark says he's not like Martinson, and Wes lists some other names that apparently that Grendel's had a problem with. Mark tells him he has it under control. We cut to the grocery store where a woman with 3 kids in her cart, one kid grabs a box of Raisin Bran and throws it on the ground. She grabs him and asks him if he wants a timeout. Again, I was a child of the 80s and 90s, and I never got a timeout growing up. The closest, as the joke goes, the closest thing to a timeout I ever got was when my mother or my grandfather took time out of their busy day to whip my ass. So we suddenly hear Jesse's voice ask the woman, "What's your secret summer fantasy?" Yes, you could get beer at Pizza Hut. This is one of them movies that's going to be like a real throwback to the 90s and 80s because, or a real, like, what do you call it? Nostalgia, because again, a lot of us grew up in the 80s and 90s, and it was a completely different time. I'm telling you now, it was completely different. My voice is starting to go a little bit. The mother says, or Jesse asks the woman, "What's your secret summer fantasy?" The woman looks at the camera and goes, "Chloroform." So you want to knock out your kids? Got it. It cuts outside in front of a fountain where a younger woman, where she asks the woman the same thing as she wants to date Tom Cruise. We cut to a guy in a fast food joint, and he also says he wants a date with Tom Cruise. Then it cuts to a kid outside, and he says, "These space people come down in this big spaceship and eat my mom and dad." Dark. And it turns out that Jessie is a reporter / question girl on a local news station. After the segment airs, she is walking around the station when she is called in by the director. His name is Russell. Russell has decided that he wants to try her out on the 8 o'clock news report. She gets excited and he tells her that it's a harder news hour, so they'll have to toughen up her image a little bit. And as they're talking about it, Mark starts banging on the window, telling her, "Let's go." Holds his fingers to his watch and everything, and he mouths to her that they have to go now, please. And he does the hand motion for please. Cut outside to a parking garage as they're walking to one of their cars, I guess Mark's car, and Jessie tells him that she can't believe she put off her boss as he's about to give her the biggest break of her lifetime. Mark apologizes again, but he wanted to make the big airport welcome, and she says it's okay. So now, again, we're talking the 90s. It's pre-9/11. And kids in the 90s and before 9/11, you were allowed to actually walk down to the actual gate that people left from at the airport, that people basically boarded and unboarded the plane with, even without a boarding pass. You weren't going to get on the plane without a boarding pass, but you could walk all the way to the gate without a boarding pass. In 2024, no, the hell you can't. He tells her to wait until she gets a load of this guy. He tells her to wait until she gets a load of this guy because he used to have girls hanging all over him. A handsome man walks out and she asks, "Is that him?" No, not him. Another guy walks out and Mark says he's too young. And she lies and tells him that he looks young. And I don't ever remember John Larroquette looking young. Finally, a very tired-looking man walks out of the ramp, holding about 10 bags. It is, of course, Fred. Fred calls Mark Pudge, and then Fred falls down from the weight of the bags. Prop fall. Ha ha. Fred hugs Mark with tears in his eyes, and we learn why, as the most New Jersey woman to ever walk the planet walks out of that plane, and we meet Fred's wife, Bernice. Bernice tells Jessie that she looks just like a movie star, and Fred says better because their TV is on. And before he can get a full sentence out, she shushes him and tells him to tell Mark and Jessie the big news. And it turns out that Bernice is pregnant. Mark says they truly have something to celebrate because Jessie's about to get a promotion at the TV station, and Mark just got a major assignment at his company. Bernice could give two shits. Fred says that he just got canned. The awkwardness is broken by Mark as he says, "Hey, you know what? Let's go get the luggage." And there is a ton more luggage. Like there's at least 5 or 6 more giant, like almost like chest size bags. As Fred pulls it off, and then we see a cat carrier come off the plane. Bernice gets overly excited, starts pushing people out of the way, and it's Bernice's cat, Scruffy. And she starts doing the baby talk. "Who's my little baby? Oh, look at you." And introduces it to Mark and Jessie. Mark tells Fred that he didn't say anything about a cat. The cat literally reaches out and swipes at Jessie, tearing the sleeve of her dress. Mark says, she's okay though, aren't you? Jesse said, he's Fred's apologizing and all that stuff. And Mark says, oh, you're okay though, aren't you? And Jesse just goes, no. So they're in the car. Bernice continues baby talking the cat as they're basically, it's LA rush hour. They're stuck in traffic. Mark asks Fred what he was doing before he was fired, and Fred tells him he was working in a sewage plant. He says the best part about it is that he got to keep any goodies that came down the pipe. He says one time he found a genuine snakeskin wallet with $80 in it. He had to clean it up a little bit though. The cat gets down and Bernice tries to catch it, and Jesse says, don't let it go into our seats. Bernice picks it up, and the cat just projectile vomits all over the car, and especially on Jesse. Like, she showers in this. They get home, and Bernice puts the cat down and goes straight to the fish tank and goes, oh, yeah, there's dinner. Jesse goes to change and get cleaned up. Bernice looks unimpressed with the house, and she says, it's a little small. Fred says smaller than they pictured, and Mark offers to show them their room. And apparently their room, they are on an air mattress or a futon mattress on the floor. Again, they didn't plan to have guests yet. Bernie says she doesn't mind sleeping on the futon if the baby doesn't. And we cut to the evening where Jesse approaches Mark in the backyard, and she tells him that she can't believe he gave them their bedroom. Mark explains, well, she is pregnant after all, and it's been a little rough on Fred. Mark finally admits it's probably a bad idea to have house guests. He says Fred is a pod version of the guy he grew up with, and that Fred had given them both expensive watches as well. Jessie says she can't believe he could afford them since he just lost his job from fishing stuff from the soup. They both look at each other as they smell their watches and decide, we might need to take these off. Cut inside, Mark and Fred are having beers on the sofa while Bernice is in the kitchen watching Jesse make dinner. Bernice basically just keeps staring at her, and Jesse's just like, what? What are you? Bernice says since they're family, she can ask. And she asks Jesse how much her nose cost. And Jesse's a little offended. I'm not going to lie. She is a little offended. Bernice says she doesn't have to hide it from her, as she has the trained eye of a beautician. And she's seen that nose before in Cosmo. The entire time, Jessie is just like slowly pouring herself a glass of wine, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Bernice talks about wanting to get herself a nose job and knows about this guy named Dr. Nick who gave her friend a nose job, and she got a set of Ginsu knives and got to keep the old nose in a jar of formaldehyde. And this chick just keeps talking and talking and talking as Jessie excuses herself to the den with Mark and Fred. And you could like the door to the kitchen shuts, and you can still hear her talking and yapping. Jessie tells Mark she thinks she knows what's wrong with Fred. Fred asks Pudge if he remembers the Oboisky twins. And Jessie finally asks Mark, why does he keep calling you Pudge? And then she looked and, Mark says nothing. And then she looks at Fred. Why do you keep calling him Pudge? Mark says nothing. Fred says nothing. But then we cut to later, and they're watching old reels, the old movie reels. And Mark was a fat kid. They all laugh at him because as Mark, asks, how many reels of this did you bring? This stuff did you bring? Fred says, a couple dozen. We pan over to Jessie, and she is literally bent over laughing. And snorting at Mark's misery. Jessie asks if he did anything but eat, and Mark says apparently not. Jessie also says that when he said he was big for his age, she thought he meant tall. She's laughing this entire time, by the way. Another part of the video shows the young Mark with some reindeer ears, and he was on a cart. Fred says there was a game they used to play called Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and I chuckled a little bit at that one. Everyone is laughing their ass off except for Mark. Mark stands up and says he's going to get himself a drink and matches up perfectly with the reindeer ears, which makes everyone laugh that much louder. Day 2 flashes across the screen. We see Scruffy running around and he wakes Mark up as it runs across him. And the cat starts playing with a random cord. And we see it belongs to a very heavy lamp. The cat keeps pulling on it, and finally it falls, almost taking Mark. Mark rolls off the mattress and chases the cat out of the room. The cat runs down the stairs and he throws its toy at it, breaking a glass vase. And then we hear Fred say, "Strike 3, he's out. He's out of there." Fred, who is cleaning the house, says you haven't lost that old pitching arm, huh? Bernie says, "Rise and shine, lazy bones. We have a big day ahead of us." Mark looks shocked at this, and apparently they do as we cut to Venice Beach. And of course, the the famous Muscle Beach gym on the sand. Basically, they're being forced to take Fred and Bernice sightseeing. One of the big muscle men, or I guess bodybuilders you call them, lifts Bernie into a gorilla press position, and she yells at him, "Hey, watch the vulva!" Fred tries to take the picture, but the camera isn't working, and the guy is struggling to hold her. He finally puts her down, and Mark catches her as Fred finally takes the picture of Mark holding Bernice. They cut to Groman's Chinese theater, and Bernice says that she always wanted to eat here. Joke's on you, it's a theater. Then over to the Hollywood Walk of Fame, where they start taking pictures of Jesse and Bernie with their hands in Joan Crawford's cement hand prints. Bernie says this is the woman who used to beat her kids with coat hangers, which made me laugh for a personal reason. They take the pictures, and Fred has a problem lifting Bernice up. Bernice is putting her hands on Marilyn Monroe's handprints, and all of her press-on nails basically get stuck in the cement. Now we cut to a couple of hookers taking a picture with Fred, and they're all over him. Mark says, "Everyone say trick." Fred starts feeling around and asks Bernice if she has the traveler's checks. And she tells him he put them in his pocket this morning. Needless to say, the hookers stole the checks. Day 3 starts out with Jesse asking Fred if he called the people about the traveler's checks. He tells her that their machine said they're on vacation until after Labor Day, and Bernice told him that's why you shouldn't have bought them off of some guy in the Walmart parking lot. Mark walks in with a map of LA and an itinerary. Mark explains that he and Jesse aren't going to be able to see everything with them because of their work, and he doesn't want them to miss any of the hot spots. Fred says he appreciates it, but they're flat broke without the traveler's checks. Mark hands them some money, and Fred turns it down, but Bernice says they'd much rather spend the rest of their vacation sitting right there. Mark offers him the key to his car. Cut to the backyard, and Mark and Jesse are enjoying an alcoholic beverage in their backyard while Fred and Bernice are gone. Mark says best $300 they've ever spent, and Jesse is wondering when his cousins should be back. Mark says not for several hours, and Jesse gives him the look. They start to walk back inside, and Jesse whistles to Mark. He turns around, and she starts to do a little striptease in the door. We see a lot of Jesse's bra before she closes the curtains. She removes the bra and goes to remove her panties, and now she's topless in just a skirt behind the curtains. You don't get to. There is no nudity in this movie, guys. I'm gonna tell you that right now. There is no nudity. Jesse and Mark start to make out when the doorbell goes off. They choose to ignore it and make out some more before we hear someone yell out, "Jessa." Jesse says, shit, my sister. Enter Claudia, Jesse's snob, gold-digging sister. Mark hands Jesse her undergarments and answers the door, telling Claudia that now isn't a really good time. But she just screams at him that Kadir kicked me out. Pushes past him and cries out for her sister again. And then there's a ton of luggage on the porch. So, fast forward, Jesse's trying to comfort her sister, but it turns out that Kadir didn't really kick her out, and Mark asks if he even knows she's gone. Claudia says he barely even knows she's alive and that he cut her allowance. And Jesse goes, Mark, he cut her allowance. Mark just basically asks, what, the $9,000 per month? Claudia says he makes her drive his old Jaguar. Jesse tells her some people have worse problems. And Claudia goes, like who? Jesse says, like people who don't have a car. And Claudia literally responds, well, who cares about them? The phone rings and Mark answers, and it's Kadir. Mark tells Claudia he found her note and he just wanted to see if she was there. All right, it's at this point I'm going to remind everybody this is a movie from the 90s. There are some terminology that people aren't going to like. This is not me saying this. This is the movie. Please do not come for my head. He just wanted to see if she was there. Claudia asks why, and Kadir tells Mark he's canceled all her credit cards. Claudia calls him a Middle Eastern maggot, and Mark tries to give Claudia the phone, and she says he can talk to her lawyer. And calls him a towel head. Again, the movie, not me. Mark tells Kadir that she's very upset over their love spat, and Kadir says that he'll forget everything if she comes home and makes him dinner. Claudia's response is, grind some glass, Ayatollah. Mark laughs and tells Jesse to turn the TV down, basically trying to make it seem like it's not Claudia, calling him some very racist remarks. Claudia takes the phone from Mark and she tells Kadir, I cannot live on that. I cannot live on that. Then she tells him not to speak Farsi to her. And Claudia basically goes, all right, Kadir, that's it. Mark interrupts her and goes, a nice duck for dinner. I want a nice Degas painting in the bathroom. Claudia finishes it. She wants a divorce. Mark goes nuts, storms into the kitchen and starts angrily shredding some lettuce. Jesse comes running in and saying she didn't mean it this time, and Mark says she means it every time. Mark says they aren't taking her in and she needs to go to a hotel. Jesse says if he can have his idiot cousin stay with him, they can certainly take in her poor sister who has been thrown out on the street without a nickel. And at that moment, Claudia enters the kitchen asking if they have any good scotch. Jesse flashes her bra, and Claudia is now added to the list of guests. Mark puts her luggage into the guest room and tells her a couple of days and that's it. Mark tells her in his best fake butler voice, if you need anything else, don't hesitate to get it yourself. At that moment, Mark walks away, and at that moment, the cousins arrive back at the house with a ton of souvenirs, like a bunch of stuff from SeaWorld and Universal Studios and things like that. And Fred is making whale noises as he backs in. Bernie is bitching about Fred dropping a whole day's worth of film into the La Brea tar pits. Claudia hears all the commotion, and calls for Mark or Jesse. She slowly makes her way to the door and opens it, runs out, and maces Fred right in the eyes. Cut to after where Jesse is putting a wet cloth on Fred's face. Mark says, I have never seen anyone's eyes that red before. And Claudia asks what she was supposed to do. They looked insane. Bernice says, "We're not insane. I'm from New Jersey." And Bernice gets excited because as Jesse and Claudia stand side by side, she says they have the same nose. And Bernice says they must have had a 2-for-1 special at the Snip Snip shop. Claudia gets angry and says she told that butcher not to make it too perfect. Jesse tells Claudia that Bernie has some weird nose fetish. She's trying to talk her down. Like, look, she has some kind of weird nose fetish. I can't eat. Bernie says it's not perfect. See, he left one nostril bigger than the other. Claudia says she had a deviated septum and that she had to get it fixed. Jesse tries to keep Bernie away from Claudia, but Bernie says that maybe she could interview the two of them for a new book she's writing, calling it Pretty for Peanuts. Now Jesse has to stop Claudia from going after Bernie and tells Bernice to go play with her cat. Bernice is like, "Hey, yeah, I haven't seen Scruffy all afternoon." And she starts calling for him. And I wrote, "No shit, you haven't seen him. You've been gone all day." Bernice turns around and starts screaming. They all look, and the cat is in the fish tank, dead as a doornail. We cut to the backyard where we are now laying Scruffy to rest. Bernice starts to say a prayer, and Jesse just says $42 worth of angelfish. Claudia says this is ridiculous. Why don't we just flush it down the toilet? And Mark says, no, not our toilet. Bernice asks God why he always takes the good ones. She lays his toy on top of his body and says, "Sleep well, sweet prince." We cut to later that night. Mark and Jesse are asleep, and there is some scratching, and we hear some glass breaking. Jesse finally wakes up and tells Mark, "Hey, she thinks there's somebody in the house." Mark doesn't wake up though, so she decides to climb over him and check on what's going on in the kitchen. She turns on the light to see that one of the windows was open and one of their plants got knocked over into the sink. Thinking it was just the wind, she closes the window. She takes a step back, steps on Scruffy's squeaky toy, and screams as the dead cat jumps out at her. She screams as Mark comes running. Mark jumps back as he sees the dead cat in the kitchen. Bernie yells as her and Fred come running that whoever's in the house, whoever has in the house, better watch out because she has an Uzi. Bernice apologizes. Bernice gets excited and apologizes to Scruffy for burying him alive. Fred does the sign of the cross. Bernice was basically just like, "Pete, is that smell you or this kitchen?" As Mark has to hold Jesse back. Day 5. We open up on Mark in his office talking about the stock market. He tells the person on the phone that he wants 1,000 shares once it hits Bernice. I mean $100. Wes comes back in because Stark wants to see an update on the Grindle portfolio. Wes tells him he has something on his jacket, and it's cat fur. Mark says he opened a can of peaches and there was cat hair inside of it. Wes asks when he gets rid of these people, and Mark, with a huge smile on his face, says, "Today." We come back to the house where Jesse is saying goodbye to Bernice. Bernice says that when the baby is born, they'll have to all come back out and do this again. And Jesse says, "No, pictures. Pictures are worth a 1,000 words." Bernie tries to delay leaving again, and we cut outside to Fred and Mark at the trunk of the car. Fred says he knows it couldn't have been easy the past few days because Bernice can be a handful. Bernice is still talking to Jesse and won't shut up. She yells for Fred to come back and say goodbye to Jesse. And as she turns to leave, she slips on the doormat outside the house, goes flying into the air, and lands on her ass. Mark and Fred both go running to help, telling her not to move. Jessie says she's going to call her doctor, and Bernie doesn't want one of those LA quacks. She needs her real doctor. She tells her to call Dr. Jack Penix. Jessie calls 411. Back in the day, kids, 411 used to be what you called to get someone's phone number. I am sorry, guys. My voice is starting to crack a little bit. Jesse calls 411 and says, Trenton, New Jersey, Dr. Jack Penix. With an X. You get it? His name sounds like penis. Fred is trying to help her, and she keeps pushing him away. Jesse says the doctor says she needs to be taken to the nearest bed possible, and she needs to stay there. Mark says, of course she'll stay here. How long? And Jesse says, for the rest of her pregnancy. So Bernice is stuck in the same position she landed in and asks how she's supposed to stay in this position for 6 months. Jesse wants to go get her doctor, but again, Bernice refuses. Bernice says she needs a man of science, not some ass lifter. Fred says whatever they do, it has to be real cheap because since he lost his job, they don't have any medical coverage. Now we cut outside where there's a teenage kid using a power saw to cut the head off of a Barbie doll. And then we see a teenage girl bouncing on a trampoline. Their father comes into the picture and tells the boy, how many times do I have to tell you not to play with dolls? Mark says hi to Dale, the father, and Dale asks, what is it now? What is it now, Banister? The espresso machine down again? More artichoke leaves down your disposal? And Dale asks what the problem is. We now cut inside where Dale has taken Mark's workout machine and has rigged up pretty much a harness for Bernice to sit in. For some reason, the daughter tells Mark, and this is just random, the daughter tells Mark that she just got her first period today. And Mark has the same look on his face that all of us would have on their face, which is, what the fuck? Dale says no thanks necessary, just named a little bugger after him. And Bernice says, yeah, Sluggo Bannister. Bernice says she feels like a human swing set here. Don't touch that! And you hear something smack the ground. Dale says that he could drywall her into the basement if need be. Mark tells him, I'll keep that in mind. We cut to a bar where Mark and Fred are drinking. Fred says they never should have come, Pudge, and Mark tells him to not be silly and asks him not to call him Pudge anymore. He decides to call him Stretch. Fred goes on to say that Mark is living the life. Nice house, he's important at his office, and he's got a wonderful wife. Mark makes a toast to wonderful wives, and Fred says Bernice is giving him cancer. Okay. Mark has had enough and tells him to stop talking like that. And do you know what your problem is? You let that woman walk all over you. He tells Fred that he needs to stand up to her. He asks what happened to that guy he knew back in high school who could have any girl in the senior class he wanted when he was a freshman. A guy who could break up any class without even trying. Fred just says, I don't know. Fred says somewhere between graduation and a Jerry Lewis telethon, he just sort of lost it. The song Bernadette comes on the jukebox, and Mark asks if Fred remembers Bernadette and forgot her last name. Fred tries to tell him her name was Beverly, and Mark just keeps arguing with him that her name was Bernadette. Then they start to do some dance routine that Fred did in high school for the girl Bernadette in front of the entire bar. And it's pretty entertaining in that. But after the song, Mark says what he has you don't lose. Day 6. Mark comes running down the stairs with shaving cream in his face, waking Jesse up because Fred is gone. Jesse's pretty much like, what? Fred has ran away. We cut to Bernice, who is crying, reading the note that Fred left to her. Fred wrote he was going to find the man he used to be. And Bernice basically just goes, where did he get that crap? Mark looks a little guilty as he and Jesse basically go looking around Los Angeles for Fred. We cut, basically they go around, to the tourist spots and Fred. We cut to Mark and Jesse in Mark's BMW driving along the Sunset Strip, and Jesse asks what he told Fred, and Mark says nothing. He just told him to stand up for himself once in a while. Jesse tells Mark, yeah, but he was her, because basically he tells Jesse that he was that Fred was a wreck, and Jesse says, yeah, but he was her wreck. She craves human sacrifice, and he was it. Jesse suggests calling the police, and Mark makes a really good point that a guy in LA walks out on his wife. Yeah, they'll come rushing over. She suggests hiring a detective, and Mark says they can't afford that. Jesse now suggests having Claudia watch after Bernice while they are at work. Mark says Claudia would smother her in her sleep. Back at the house, the second they walk in, Bernice yells to Mark, asking how she's supposed to pee. Mark looks at Jesse and points. And she makes the go fuck yourself sign. Like she just usually goes, uh-uh. Mark dumps out a decorative bowl on the floor and tells Jesse to deal with her evil twin. Cut to the next day. Jesse and Claudia are driving to see Kadir. Claudia is begging Jesse not to make her do this, and Jesse asks her if just this one time, wouldn't you like to handle things as an adult? Claudia says no. Claudia pouts, and Jesse tells her pouting makes wrinkles. They pull into the driveway, and now there's a gate blocking the entrance to the house. Claudia says that gate wasn't here yesterday. And neither was Slaughter Security. Remember Slaughter Security, the company that who slept with Grindel's wife? There are also Dobermans at the gate guarding as well. Jesse goes over the intercom to call to Kadir, and he's not answering. And she tells him, I know you can hear us. It took an awful lot for Claudia to come here today and work this thing out. Kadir comes over the intercom speaking Farsi again and says that woman bleeds me dry. Claudia starts screaming, and they're yelling into a sheriff, by the way, like a Cupid style statue that's all pink. Claudia starts screaming at the sheriff, saying, if you want to see blood, just let me in there, you two-bit desert rat, and I'll slash your throat. Kadir says, you try to come in here, and I'll sell you to the Bedouins. In one of the funniest parts of the movie, this is one of my favorite parts, Claudia starts to choke the bright pink cherub while Kadir is coming over there, going, don't you choke my cherub! Don't choke my cherub! Jesse's yells, Kadir, Claudia loves you. Then Claudia yells, no, I don't. And they just keep arguing. They ended up breaking the cherub falls over and breaks as Claudia continues to choke it. We cut to Mark making a presentation to Grindel. He tells him Hydrolux is a young up-and-coming company. They have the trust of the government, and they just acquired a major contract from the Navy. Mark would like to make them the cornerstone of Grindel's new portfolio. Grindel says he was a swabby himself at one point. And a secretary interrupts the meeting because Mark has a call on line 1. He tells her to tell them he'll call them back. But she says he should really take this because they said it was an emergency. He picks up the phone in the meeting room, and it's Bernice. He tells her he doesn't know when Wheel of Fortune comes on, and he left the TV guide on the dresser. Yes, I realize you're in chains. You stupid. Could you please just try? The entire conversation basically is held in front of Grindel and his boss, and Grindel says, that was an emergency? Mark says, well, yes, actually, in some warped alternate universe. Back at the house, Jessie is trying to sneak out of the house, taking her shoes off to walk across the hardwood floor. Just as he's about to open the door, Bernice yells down, not so fast, Missy! It's time to shift my butt! Jessie slams her shoes down as we see her stomp up the stairs, and then again in a different outfit. Maybe she comes back. She goes back up with a different outfit and trying to force feed Bernice. And it's pretty much just a montage of Mark and Bernice and Jesse catering to Bernice. They put the TV in her room, and she's on the screen. Basically, you have the Home Shopping Network, and there's a bust of a gray cat that looks like Scruffy. And I shit you not, Bernice yells out, "It's a bust of my pussy," which made me giggle. As Mark is taping up the television, he looks to Bernice and unravels some duct tape as if he really would really rather prefer to tape her mouth shut. They leave the room and are exhausted. The toilet starts running again, and they both tiredly say, "Jiggle the handle." We cut to Jessie doing the question thing where she asks an older woman how she handles stress, and the woman tells her a fistful of Valium. Then we cut to a construction worker who says, "Drunk," or "I get drunk, real drunk." Then we cut to another couple who both yell out, "Polka!" Then to a cop giving a parking ticket who says, "Bust somebody, anybody." Then to a short, scrawny guy who says he pumps iron, and then to a bodybuilder who says meditation. Then to an old woman who just says sex. Then they find a greaser, and he says they can't go in. It's basically a guard of a sex shop. He tells me she can't go in. The guy with the camera can't go in there with the camera. She asks him how he deals. She introduces herself and asks how he deals with stress, and he says he normally finds the source of the stress and break his legs. She almost asks into the microphone, but she asks how much something like that costs. He tells her really all matters on how much stress is involved. Usually about $200. Jessie asks what she could get for $100. He says, well, maybe a kneecap, and tells her that if she's having money problems, maybe they could work something out. Maybe she could do one of the live nude shows. And he says, but I'm also a producer of independent movies. She walks away and tells her camera guy to cut that last part. We cut to the house, and we are in Claudia's room where she is writing down some old acquaintances, the names of old acquaintances who are dying to sweep her off her feet. The list is, of course, ranked in financial order. One name has an asterisk beside it, and Claudia says it means that he's over 80. Jessie asks if she could just give Kadir one more chance, and Claudia says he tried to crush her with his automatic gate. He's made his feelings clear. We hear tires screech, and we hear the kitty go as we can pretty much figure out that it's getting run over. It is Claudia's son, Jonathan. She asks if Kadir is ready to apologize to her, and Jonathan says no, he kicked me out as well. He looks at Uncle Mark and says he needs a place to crash, and Mark says this is not a really good time. And Claudia cuts him off, saying, of course he can stay there. Jonathan says, I think I ran over your cat. Now we get cat funeral 2. They throw the cat into the same grave as last time, and Bernice is making her prayer from the second-story window from the bed with a megaphone. And then the kid from next door pokes his head through and asks what they're doing. Jessie just says, cat funeral. And the potential future serial killer asks if he can have the dead cat. Mark says no, and Jonathan asks what he'd do with a dead cat. The kid says he'll keep him in the freezer till school starts. Claudia calls him a disgusting little ghoul, and the kid responds, who are you? It's Mother? Claudia gets angry, picks up a rock, throws it at a kid who basically ducks down between the bush, and all we hear is the thump and the ow. I thought that was pretty funny. Bernice finishes her prayer with, please get me out of this little piece of hell on earth you call California. Day 10. Jessie is trying to sleep, but there's some yarn being strung across the room. She wakes up to the damn cat alive again. Jessie just looks at him and goes, "I'll kill you again, you little breath." Cut to Claudia in her room calling her potential beaux. It seems as if she has gone through all the men on the list, and she just looks at Jessie and goes, "Married, turned gay, married, in jail, malpractice, dead." Jessie asks what Claudia would say to a nice, handsome, divorced car dealer. Claudia just asks, foreign or domestic? As they're walking over to the neighbor's house, Claudia is bitching about Jess forcing her onto some total stranger, and then she sees his car, and all of a sudden she's okay with being set up by her sister. She leads her over to Dale and introduces them. They hit it off immediately, as Claudia and Jonathan are going to stay with Dale. Jessie tells Mark they were like two sex magnets straining not to slam into each other. He grabs her from behind and says, "Well, let's have sex. Let's us have sex, and we'll start right here and end up in the begonias." Jessie asks about Bernice, and Mark said he threw some raw meat in there earlier. She'll be fine for a few minutes, for a few hours. As they run off for fun, Jessie accidentally bumps into the grill with her waist, which starts rolling off the porch. It gets to the end of the porch, gets caught in a garden hose, tips over, and it sends some of the ashes or the what do you call it? Not the sparks, but the coals into Dale's house and into some sawdust. We cut to Jessie and Mark rolling around in the grass, making out, and then back over to Dale's house where a fire has started in the sawdust. Jessie asks Mark if he smells something burning, then jumps to Dale's house, entirely in flames, and the fire department working on putting it out. Claudia is bitching about 16 pairs of Italian pumps incinerated. Dale asks his son if he got all the fireworks out of there. CK, the boy's name, says yes, and then the house starts to explode with fireworks. And CK just looks and goes, "Well, almost all of them." Dale starts remembering about all of his tools, and he's basically sitting there going, "My tools. All of my tools." Claudia says, "Your tools? My shoes." Dale says, "Back off, gold card. I just lost my goddamn house." Claudia says she doesn't even see what the fuss is all about. Even a cretin like him must have insurance. Dale says, "Yeah, I have insurance, all right, and it ought to kick in about 3 months. What do I do with my kids in the meantime?" She says, "Well, I don't know. Send him to the Bel Air Hotel. Anyone who owns a Lotus." Dale asks who says he owns it. It's a perk he gets for trying to sell them. Dale goes to Mark and goes, "Bannister, what are we going to do about this?" The door opens to CK bringing in his pet snake. Katie, the daughter, runs over immediately, plugs her phone in, and immediately calls her friend Brenda. So now we have Bernice, Claudia, Jonathan, Dale, Katie, and CK as house guests. Jessie says they don't have to do this, and Mark says, "Yeah, we do if we don't want we want to avoid a lawsuit for arson." Day 12. Mark is in the bathroom attempting to take a shower. He removes his robe, and of course, Katie is jumping on her trampoline in the backyard and possibly saw everything. We cut to Jessie calling about a room to rent. It is available, and Jessie tells the person that it's for 6 people, and it kind of seems like they hung up. We cut to Mark asking people on the phone asking someone on the phone, "What's happening with your guest house out back?" "Uh-huh. And how long is she expected to live?" And he just starts apologizing profusely. We cut to the house where everyone is having dinner. Everyone's having spaghetti, it looks like. Um, Katie's on the phone and doing the whole, "You hang up first." "No, you hang up first." "Brenda, I can still hear you breathing. Hang up. You hang up first. Thing with her friend Brenda. And I remember a Simpsons episode of them doing that, where the girl tells her boyfriend, "You hang up first," and the boyfriend goes, "No, you hang up first," and the girl just goes, "Okay," and the guy goes, "I can't believe she hung up on me." Funny. Claudia asks Jonathan if his grandmother sent him a check for his birthday, and he reminds her that grandma's dead. Then it gets to CK's serial killer ass as the cat walks across the table. CK asks Jonathan if they got another cat, and Jonathan tells him, no, it's the same one. CK thinks they buried the cat alive, and that it's cool. Dale tells him not to get any ideas, even though that's the largest red flag known to man, that, hey, my kid might need some psychiatric therapy. CK says if they can bury him, I can too. And Dale just looks and goes, all right, but you gotta ask permission first. It cuts over to Mark and Jesse, who are sitting on the counter, eating a jar of peanut butter for dinner, standing at the counter, and they both say no. Bernice yells down, "Don't worry about me having dinner. I'll just lick the crumbs off my filthy sheets." Jesse holds the spoon like a knife because she wants to stab Bernice. Get it? We cut to the middle of the night where Mark is going for a midnight snack, but the refrigerator is empty, minus literally, and it's like an entire chicken it's like a cartoon, like the Tom and Jerry, where, like, when they eat the chicken and they just pull it right back out of their mouth and it's just the bones. That's literally what's in the refrigerator, with a box of baking soda. We see some smoke and a weird light coming from the living room. He walks over to inspect it, and we hear some zombie noises and Mark screams. We turn to see a bunch of family members banging on the window to come stay. The movie at this point turns black and white as more zombie house guests are walking towards the house. Jessie shows up and Mark tells her not to look in there. She asks what they want, and he tells her they all want to stay here. Jessie asks why, and Mark says maybe they're in some vacation guide for the damned. The window breaks and Jessie screams as they run away. Mark fights off a few zombie house guests. And the painting on the wall, with the only nudity in the movie, because there is some breasts on this painting, start reaching out and grabbing Mark. Jesse yells at him to go to a hotel. Mark says, "Who the hell sent you people? Get out of my house!" And it pans up. It turns out Mark is having a nightmare, as we see him and Jesse are sleeping on the kitchen floor. But we also pan to the left to see Fangster, the snake, escaping its aquarium tank into the floor. Mark says take Bernice in his sleep, and we see the snake start sliding up the blankets by Jesse's legs. She reaches over to push Mark away, thinking it's him, because she's not in the mood. Mark wakes up and goes, "What?" He says, he's like, "Well, wait, what? Well, what's wrong? I'm way over here." She lifts the blankets up and starts to scream. We cut to the garbage disposal running, and Mark and Jesse standing over it. CK walks into the room and asks if they've seen Fangster. Mark and Jesse slowly turn and shake their heads no. What did I say? Mark and Jesse slowly turn and do the whole shaking their head, like, And I think it's pretty safe to say they just killed Fangster down the garbage disposal. Day 27. It's morning again, and Mark is fixing something up in their blender. He adds dish soap to it, and it turns out he's making homemade shaving cream. He is shaving in the kitchen with a butcher knife, and Jesse walks in and says they have to do something with all of these people. He holds the knife out, and she smiles deviously. We cut to Mark's office, and Mark is working. Jonathan shows up, and Mark looks a little worried. He tells Mark that he's seen how Jonathan tells Mark that he's seen how Mark and Jesse have taken care of all of them, and he kind of wants to do his own part. He is job hunting, and Mark tells him, "Well, I don't know. It's probably not a good idea for you to come work here." He tells Mark that he wants to get his own place, and Mark gets excited and calls personnel. Jonathan says he wants to start at the bottom. The mail room would be great. Mark brings him down and introduces him to his new boss. Jonathan says, "My mom was wrong. You're not an asshole." Mark stops as if he's pissed off. And then Jonathan says, "I'll be out of your hair in no time." We cut to the house where Bernice is still in bed and ordering shit off of the home shopping network. Katie is sitting beside her for reasons. And Bernice and Claudia appear to now be staying in the same room. It seems Jesse starts to clean up. Basically, Jesse enters the room, starts to clean up, and goes to empty a glass. And Bernice tells her not to, to stop. That's P for Dr. Penix. He's checking the ovum count. Jesse looks at her and says, "You want me to mail urine to New Jersey?" And Bernice just looks and goes, "Yeah, would you? Could you?" She then asks Jesse to help her decide and reads off some baby names that she likes. Now, tell me if you like any of these names. Amaretta, Endive or Endive, Caramel, or Treblinka. Claudia gets angry and calls Bernice a yokel for naming a baby after a German concentration camp. And guys, I had to look this up. And I'm here to say that Treblinka absolutely was a German concentration camp. Not only was it a German concentration camp, but Treblinka was the second deadliest extermination camp to be built and operated by Nazi Germany in occupied Poland during World War II. It was in a forest northeast of Warsaw, 4 kilometers south of the village of Treblinka, and in what is now the Masovian Voivodeship. The camp operated between the 23rd of July 1942 and the 19th of October 1943. As part of Operation Reinhard, the deadliest phase of the final solution. During this time, it is estimated that between 700 and 900,000 Jews were murdered in its gas chambers, along with 2,000 Romani people. More Jews were murdered at Treblinka than any other Nazi extermination camp, apart from Auschwitz. So there you go. Yes, Treblinka was a German concentration camp. Jesse leaves the room, but we can still hear Claudia and Bernice arguing as she shuts the door. Bernice says she thought Treblinka was one of those fairies in Cinderella. I think she means Sleeping Beauty because there's only one fairy in Cinderella, and that's the fairy godmother. Claudia calls her a moron, and Bernice says, "I hope my water breaks all over your fur coat." We see Mark's arm coming from a closet, and he's beckoning Jesse over as she's holding half of a Collins glass full of piss. She plays coy a bit and does the whole "me" thing. She sets the piss down and enters the closet with Mark. He asks her if she's okay, and she says, "No." She asks him if he remembers when that was their room. He says, "Yes, I know, in the days before time." Jessie says she hates these people, and Mark tells her, "Jonathan got a job, so it's only a matter of time." We cut downstairs, and the cat is eating out of a dish, but underneath it looks like C4 with a cord leading from it, and the cord ends up being a fuse. CK lights the fuse, plugs his ear. Cut back to Mark and Jesse in the closet, and Mark tells her it's just the two of them right here in the closet. Just as they are about to kiss, the entire fucking kitchen explodes. Cut to the next morning where Scruffy is buried yet again, and CK is standing guard with a baseball bat. Mark drops a huge rock on the grave and says, "There, I don't think he'll be coming back this time." Mark asks him what the CK stands for anyways, and CK says, "Confirmed kills, but I might change it to cat killer." What do you think? And Mark says he thinks they have a little problem here. And my first thought is, a little one? Mark asks CK if he knows what happens if you cram too many lab rats into a small cage. And CK says they turn into fags. Ah, the 90s. Mark says, yes, some do. Others turn into cannibals. They tear each other apart. Now, when you minimize that space by blowing rooms apart, it really aggravates the situation. CK says it's just so boring here. Mark gets angry now and gets in his face and tells him, "Now listen, you psychotic little shit. You either get your act together or you're going to be a face on a milk carton. You got it?" CK says, "You touch me, I sue you." Mark says, "Well, I got a lawyer and retainer," and just pokes him multiple times, like does the whole, I'm touching you. CK looks mad, and then the fucking cat goes running by again. And it's funny because it's a fake meow when they do it, so it goes running by and you hear meow as it runs by, and it's pretty funny. CK goes chasing after the cat. Mark goes into Bernice's room as Jesse is doing Bernice's nails. Mark says, "Do you hear that sound? It's a lawnmower, and it's the sound of CK mowing the lawn." Mark says all that kid needed was some discipline and some positive motivation. Jesse looks outside, and we cut outside where CK almost gets the cat again with the lawnmower. Mark says we can take control of the situation, darling. Be the captains of our own destiny. He kisses Jesse on the cheek and says things are looking up, and I think this will work. And I think this will work out just fine. Don't you, hun? Jesse is staring out the window as CK finishes. As soon as CK finishes mowing the word "fuck" in the grass. She agrees with him. Cut to nighttime, and Jesse is asking questions again. A mechanic just says, "Shoot him." Guy with a Bob Ross hairstyle says, "Strangle him." Two little girls say, "Cook him in the oven." An old woman standing over her husband says, "Hide his medication." And this dude looks like, "What the fuck? Like, what? What did you just say?" It's like, "I'm right here." A priest says kindness, and then gets hit in the face with a soccer ball and just basically screams, "Oh, fucking shit!" and runs off, assumingly after a culprit. Then we go to a surgeon, and he says, "We're talking about someone with a clean bill of health, right?" "Oh, then I guess I'd use insulin. I'd inject 300 cc's into a freckle. Bingo, all the symptoms of a massive coronary. Then it goes outside to pump a pimp. Then it goes outside to a pimp and he says, 'A hammer. Definitely a hammer.'" Then we cut to a mom who says, "I don't know, Clorox in the bean dip?" Finally, back to the studio where Jess is on screen playing with a paper airplane. She crashes it down into the desk, and the anchor looks and lets her know that they're back. Jesse says, "How would you murder someone? If you have questions, Los Angeles, ask somebody else." I mean, I swear to God, I don't know the answers. I don't know anything anymore. The anchor says that a really interesting question there. That's a really interesting question there, Jessica. I'm sure that's crossed everyone's mind every now and then. Jesse asks how Karen, the anchor, would murder someone if you were absolutely desperate to get rid of them because they were driving you out of your fucking mind. The director leaves the production area at this point, and Karen says it looks like insulin's the way to go. And she's very uncomfortable saying this. Jesse loses it on her saying, "Oh yeah, right. Like you can just tap dance your way into a drugstore and get that stuff." Please. Oh, and that Clorox bit, there's a real winner. Those people were up all night with the runs, and they refused to jiggle the handle. Karen asks what she's talking about, and Jesse responds, "House guests. I'm talking about house guests from hell." Someone behind the camera says she's losing it. Jesse says, "Listen to me, ladies and gentlemen. No, get that snack later. You listen to me. Lock your doors. Don't answer the phone. If you have to leave the country, then do it. Don't let them in. Don't let them fool you. They're very tricky. They might look like your mother or your father or your best friend, but they're not. They're animals. They're cockroaches." They're animals. They're cockroaches. If we have a nuclear war, the only thing to survive will be house guests. Karen just smiles and says, "We'll be right back with weather." Day 49. Wes pulls into the driveway of the house, and there's trash on the lawn. He just walks into the house, and Dale is making something and has the music blaring. He's basically woodworking in the house. Wes asks him if he's seen Mark, and Dale says, "Yeah, he's probably upstairs." Wes asks if the Banisters are doing a little remodeling, and Dale says, "I guess you might say that." He's building bleachers for the TV set. Wes goes upstairs looking for Mark, and he finds Katie and Claudia waiting outside the bathroom. And CK comes out, places a number on the wall, and Claudia goes in. And once she closes the door, she screams, "You repulsive little midget, next time flush!" Wes asks Katie if she's seen Mark, and she tells him to check the kitchen. Bernice starts yelling that her chains are squeaking and it's time for her lube job. Wes is walking around basically trying to see what was in the room, and Katie pretty much tells him, "I wouldn't do that if I was you." Wes is walking around like, "What the fuck?" And we see their house is just absolutely destroyed. He starts to walk towards Bernice's room, and Katie tells him she wouldn't go in there. Yeah, that like I just said. Wes heads downstairs where he sees the absolutely decimated kitchen, and CK is trying to force the cat into the microwave. Wes asks if he's seen Mark, and he tells him the backyard, and the cat gets away. CK yells at Wes now, basically just tells Wes, look what you made me do." Wes heads out to the backyard where Mark and Jesse have built makeshift tents to live in. Jesse is the first to greet him and basically just goes, "Oh, Wes, you're not moving in too, are you?" Wes says, "What? No." Wes says Mark didn't come into work this morning and their phone is off the hook, so he was checking on him. Mark leaves the porta potty. There's a porta potty in the backyard. That's in the backyard, and washes his hands with a watering can. Wes asks what the hell is going on here, and Mark tells him he didn't sleep too good last night. At 4 a.m., the sprinklers went off and woke him up. He also thinks he has a short in one of these extension cords as well. Wes says he means this, points to the camp, and them. Why don't you get rid of them? Mark shakes his head no, and Jesse says, oh no. Wes says if they won't, then he will, and Mark says, we tried that, and Jesse just basically says, it just makes more. Mark says they just hand over their paychecks, stay out of their way. It's for the best. Wes says you have to listen to me, pal. If you don't get back to work soon, you won't have a paycheck. Wes tells Mark that Hydrolux is down 32 points and Grindel has gone completely apeshit. Wes says we gotta go. Mark asks what should I do? Wes says we gotta go to work. Mark looks back and tells Jesse he has to go to work. Jesse tells him not to be late for dinner, and Mark asks, what are we having? Mark asks what are we having for dinner, and Jesse comes up with a pigeon and says, just squab again. Wes says, oh God, what happened here? We cut to the office where Mark is on the phone with someone saying crackpots file indictments for lawsuits every day. Even the Navy can make a mistake. He says, no, maybe I missed the Wall Street Journal all of last week. He tells Grindel, it basically turns out he's on the phone with Grindel. He tells Grindel that his Hydrolux stock will be sold immediately. Mark's boss walks in now and tells him he better have a good explanation. Mark says the Grindel situation is under control, but the boss says that's not what I'm talking about. The boss slams a paper down on his desk, and it's almost $6,000 worth of calls to South America from Mark's office. All of them are to Colombia. Mark says obviously it's a mistake and that he never made any of these. The boss asks who did, and Mark says, how the hell do I know? Mark says he'll find out, and the boss says, yeah, you do that. So Mark heads down to the mail room where he is looking for Jonathan. But the mail guy tells Mark he has another one of these packages. Mark asks what packages? The kid says these ones. Didn't you get them? Jonathan said he'd take care of it. Mark looks at the package, and the address is from Bogota, Colombia, sent to Mark Banister. It dawns on Mark what it is. Take a guess, guys. And he kind of gets a little nervous. For some reason, he just takes a fucking knife and stabs the package. And of course, a white powdery substance comes out. It's cocaine. Mark runs to the men's room, tries to flush it down the toilet, and for some reason his boss didn't lock the stall or something. Because that door just opened. He didn't push it or anything. Mark panics, runs out of the bathroom, running through the office, and then he all just realizes where he is and starts walking slowly. Then it shows him in his car, spinning home in his car, and when he pulls into the driveway, a fucking elephant starts stampeding towards him. From the doorway, we see Fred yelling to Tiny the elephant to stop. Mark asks, what the hell is going on here? And Fred says he did just like Mark said. Mark tries to walk past. He goes, look, I'll talk to you in a minute about this. Hold on. Fred, who stops him, Fred calls him Mark and introduces him to Tiny Bannister. Mark says this isn't a good time, and Fred stops him again. Fred tells him that I found the real me. Mark said, what, you joined the circus? Fred said no, he traveled. He met interesting people. Well, mostly Shriners. Mark says, let me get rid of this box and as he's saying this, a police car pulls into the driveway with its lights on. Mark starts to panic a little bit and hides the box behind him on the car. Two officers get get out. One is a bald cop and one's female cop. That is literally what I'm going to call them the rest of the movie. Their names are not important. The bald cop asks if he's the owner of Tiny, and Mark says, "Oh no." Fred tells the officer that it's his. Meanwhile, Mark has the box on the car behind him, and the cat is back. And the cat starts messing with the box. The cop asks Fred if he has a permit. And Fred tells him, "No, we just got into town a little bit ago." Bald cop asks Fred if this is his residence, and Fred says no, but my wife's upstairs. They got her all strung up. And they say these are a lot of red flags to be sending to a cop. Meanwhile, the cat, is now eating the cocaine. Female cop asks, "What?" Mark laughs, and Fred says she's all right and everything. She just tried to stab me. Mark laughs and excuses himself, grabs the box, and heads inside to find Jonathan. The elephant goes running off. Fred takes off after it, and the female cop looks at the bald cop and goes, "Well, how do we radio this in?" Then all of a sudden, and probably the second funniest, could be the funniest for a lot of people, scene in the movie, the cat is literally just, basically you just hear this, meow, 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 and you see the cat just running in circles. Bleh. It literally goes black and falls down dead right in front of the cops. The cops lean down. Baldy puts his hand in the powder and does the 80s cop movie thing and tastes it. He tells her, "I'll tell you how we're going to radio this in. Rock house." Inside, Mark finds Jonathan, shoves him against the wall, and asks what this package is. And Jonathan tells him it has your name on it. Guess it's your cocaine, man. Mark grabs a frying pan and is going to bash Jonathan with it. But then he looks outside and hears the female police officer calling the house in as a drug house with an elephant on the premises. Mark starts to freak out more as 5 fucking police cars show up. He runs upstairs, goes to flush it down their toilet, and the handle breaks off. Again, $10 fix. He walks into the bedrooms, and we see a helicopter flying over the house. He slips through the main bedroom into Bernice's room, or the bathroom, into Bernice's room, where she asks him what is 1051 in Roman, and he climbs over her bed out the window, but now the helicopter is on that side of the house. The helicopter does the whole, come out with your hands up, and Mark jumps out the window, hits the trampoline, lands, and heads through the bush line out of sight. The light lands on the grass that CK made to say, "Fuck you." And the pilot basically goes, "Oh, they want to play hardball, huh? Call in the battering ram." Mark climbs a wall and lands on someone's grill, and for those 10 seconds he was standing on it, somehow it melted his shoe. Mark goes running as the cops bag the dead cocaine kitty for evidence. Now the SWAT team is on the premises as chaos reigns supreme. Claudia is in the bathroom brushing her hair, and Bernice asks what's going on out there. Claudia says, "Men, lots of men." Bernice asks, "What men?" Claudia tells her, "The police. They're the police. They're here to arrest your husband." Fred has finally caught Tiny, and bald cop and female cop with about 4 others pull their guns on him. Bald cop says they're going to the squad car. To put their hands up, they're going to the squad car. Fred puts his hands up, and so does Tiny, which I thought was pretty cute and funny. Mark is trying to sneak away when someone comes out yelling at him for walking on his new driveway, and that he just put that in. "These pebbles are worth $600. $600. Meanwhile, Mark opens the package and just starts dumping the cocaine in the man's driveway. And as he walks away, Mark looks back. Mark says to himself, "I think you mean 600,000, you old fart." Mark stops as he sees the battering ram drive by, and it looks like a fucking tank. Mark runs off as the SWAT team is guiding the battering ram to the house. Cut to the news studio. and Jesse is begging her boss to let her go on. He tells her he can't, but she begs and says she won't ever let her home life affect her personal life again. Russell tells her this is his ass, Jesse, and lets her go on. Karen sits down and doesn't look too happy that Jesse is sitting beside her. Lights come on, the news starts, and Karen says our top story tonight: a SWAT team strike has been called in on a Santa Monica home. We now go live to field reporter Brad Bovee. Brad says details are a little sketchy, but apparently police are suspecting cocaine on the premises, and they have called in a full strike. Jesse's looking down at this point. She doesn't see where they are. She looks up as Brad says, "What we've heard is that they have reason to believe this is a rock house." They cut to the house as the tank is running full fucking speed at it. It's actually a really good image. Dale looks out the door only sees the battering ram like just moving right at him. He screams, "Holy shit!" Dives out as the tank comes crashing into the house. The elephant runs by again, and on the screen with Fred running behind it, Jesse is just looking on in disbelief from the news station. The reporter says someone is coming out, as if the police would let him that close. Like he runs up to the house as CK, Katie, and Dale come walking out. CK says, "That was cool." Katie looks up and goes, "Are we on TV? Brenda, call me." And the phone rings. As she goes running, the reporter asks Dale if he's the homeowner, and Dale says no. Jessie is shaking her head, like trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Dale says that they say he was doing drugs. Brad says, "Well, we really don't know that." Dale takes the mic and says he never did trust that guy. It's them quiet, wimpy types who always get involved in this sort of thing. Jesse is still looking on in disbelief. Dale says flipping out, raping, killing. Brad sends it back to Karen until we can make sense out of this. The elephant is on the back of the battering ram, and Fred is telling Tiny that this isn't your mama. We cut back to the studio, and Jessie has her head down on the desk, and she is just banging her head on the desk. Karen says the homeowners are being sought for questioning, and that baby elephant you just saw is apparently unlicensed and will be taken into police custody. Russell looks on panicky from behind the camera as Jessie is losing it again. Karen says, "We'll keep you updated as this bizarre story unfolds." Karen looks over at Jessie, who is still banging her head on the desk. Jessie says she can't believe it. She doesn't believe it, and just walks off as Karen keeps going with a new story. Jessie walks into the next room where apparently it's a cooking show called the Happy Homemaker set, where it's a full kitchen, it's full kitchen, all that stuff, oven, sink, all that good stuff. She's looking around at the normal kitchen, and Mark walks in, and Jessie asks what happened. He tells her that their nephew is a drug czar, and he's David Jansen. He's interrupted by Karen saying that the Dow Jones plummeted again today, and among the hardest hit stocks was the Hydrolux Corporation, which amid allegations of fraud by the U.S. Navy fell a record 85 points. Mark panics as he's forgotten to sell Grindel's shares in Hydrolux. Hydrolux CEO was unavailable for comment. The news did learn that he is on vacation in Bora Bora. Mark freaks out and says now he's an unemployed David Jansen as he forgot to sell Grindel's stocks. Mark tells her, "Let's go," but Jessie doesn't want to go. She throws a fit, like grabs the counter, and she starts screaming that let's live here in the Happy Homemaker kitchen. Jessie says everything is clean and beautiful, and the fridge is food. Jessie keeps losing it, saying she won't let anyone take her away from this. She starts screaming and hyperventilating. She says they could live on one of the soap opera sets, and they could be the Phantoms of Channel 12. Mark goes to say everything is going to be all right, but she screams at him, "Don't say that!" She's crying, saying it's never going to be all right. Mark hugs her and tells her to calm down, that they can stay here for the night, but in the morning they're leaving town, changing their names, and we're going to start all over. Jessie asks, "What about the house?" And Mark says, forget the house. He doesn't give a damn about the house. He tells her he doesn't care about their jobs or their stuff. The only thing that matters, really matters, is us. They hug as we cut to day 50. We open up, and all of Dale's beer cans are on the floor. Mark and Jesse are walking in what used to be their front door. Everything is completely destroyed. Mark says, let's just grab what we can and get the hell out of here. Mark accidentally kicks the answering machine, and it starts to play a message. It's Dr. Penix from Trenton. He's been trying to reach Bernice for weeks, but this line is always busy. He's got her test results here, and he doesn't know how to tell her this, but we cut upstairs to Bernice's room. Jesse enters the room, and she just stands there and looks at Bernice and says, "You're not pregnant." Bernice doesn't believe her. Jesse tells her that Dr. Penix just called and said, there is no possible way in this world that you are pregnant. Bernice tells her she must have sent him the wrong piss. Jesse shows her stomach and says it's flat as a board. Bernice says she has a flat uterus, or flat fetus. Jesse says, Bernice, get over it and get out. Jesse goes to leave, but Bernice tells Jesse she's just jealous because no sperm in his right mind would swim up her shriveled canal. And that is finally the straw that broke the fucking back, because Jesse screams and starts rocking Bernice back and forth until finally she gets yeeted out the window, bounces off the trampoline, and lands on Mark and Jesse's tent in the backyard. It was actually a very funny image. Bernice picks herself up, turns to see Jesse walking out of the house. Bernice says, stay away from me. Jesse just says, say it. Bernice asks, what? Jesse just says, I want to hear you say it. Bernice says she guesses she's not pregnant. But I could have sworn, because I felt my breast swelling and the constipation. Jesse screams, say it! Bernice says, somebody help. She looks at Mark and Fred and asks, isn't anybody going to do something? Mark goes, nah. And even Fred goes, nope. Jesse keeps stalking her. Jesse says, I'm going to count to 3. Bernice, 1. Bernice says she wants a second opinion. 2. Bernice tries to run, but Jesse grabs her into an arm lock and pulls up. She gets to her ear and tells her to say it. Bernice finally says it. All right, we're leaving. And Mark starts doing the biggest happy dance ever on the porch as Bernice tells Fred to start packing. Jesse kicks Bernice over as Mark and Jesse celebrate. And Jesse says, it's over. It's finally over. Then we look at the house and we see Claudia, Jonathan, and everyone else sticking their heads out. Mark says, not quite. Let's clean house. Jesse says, yeah. Bends over, grabs her skirt, and says, kick ass. Claudia ducks her head back in, and CK pulls the patio doors shut. We see Mark and Jesse just walk up. Mark picks up a chair and smashes it through the glass door. They step inside and they both just yell, company! With the most insane looks on their faces. CK pops out and they just start making insane faces at him, like, which sends him running away. Jesse grabs some spray paint and yells, oh, sis! Jess has got a surprise for you! Trying to do these voices isn't good for my voice. Jesse heads upstairs as Katie grabs the phone. Dale pops out and tells Mark, oh, so you want to play? All right, let's go, Banister. Dale's ready to fight, so Mark does the natural thing and grabs a saw, or I guess one of those, like, basically it's a regular saw. You know what it is when you see it. I think it's a skill saw. And says, "Let's play Cuisinart." Dale looks scared. Claudia locks the door as Jesse comes upstairs. Jesse says, "Oh, Claudia." Claudia says she's not decent. Jesse kicks the door in, and for some reason her blouse is wide open, revealing her bra. Jesse says, "Tell me something I don't know." Claudia tells Jesse to calm down and she'll get her a Valium. Downstairs, Mark is slowly stalking Dale with the saw. And they get to the stretched out phone cord, which is blocking Mark's way now. He looks over and Katie is talking to Brenda again. Katie tells Brenda that these people are like going totally mental. Mark cuts the cord, which is the only thing you need to do to send Katie running. Mark tells Dale he wants to ask him a question, and, "Are you circumcised?" Dale says, "I'm warning you." We cut upstairs where Jesse is spray painting Claudia's expensive shoes and dresses. Jesse tells her, "I want you to get your gold digging lily white ass out of my house." She turns and gets excited, but she goes, "Ooh," when she sees Claudia's fur coat, and Claudia goes running. Claudia is now out of the house. Jesse is looking really fucking hot standing there too, I wrote, with the blouse open. Like, the Kirstie Alley, 1990 Kirstie Alley was really hot. Mark is still going after Dale with the saw until the saw comes unplugged. Then Dale gets brave all of a sudden, calls Mark a wimp, and tells him he always figured he'd come up short in a clinch. Just as he's about to basically start pounding on Mark, all of a sudden the saw starts up again. And we see Jesse has plugged in a long extension cord. Dale goes running out of the house, and they have taken back their house. Well, almost. Jesse and Mark sit down on the couch and jump up again as they find Jonathan hiding inside of it. Jonathan pulls a knife on Mark and shoves what's left of the drugs into CK's backpack. He tells Mark to give him his keys. Mark says, Wouldn't you rather have the Lotus?" Jonathan says, Yeah, actually I would." He tosses the keys to Jonathan, but overthrows him and then tosses the lighter that were next to the keys over to Jesse, while Jonathan wasn't looking. Mark distracts Jonathan a little more while Jesse lights the fuse coming out of the bag. Jonathan calls Uncle Mark a yuppie dickhead and tells him that one day he's going to buy and sell people like you. And kids, that's called slavery. Jonathan says he's going to make some noise. Jesse says, "We know you are." Jonathan goes running, blows past his mother and CK. CK yells out, "Those are my fireworks!" And Dale tells him to get away from that car. It's a loner. Jonathan cares not as he speeds off down the road in his stolen sports car. Just as he turns the corner, Katie says, "Stupid things didn't work." And then we hear a loud explosion and see a fireball from around the corner. And CK says they always work, before they get a burnt up doormat thrown down beside them. Mark and Jesse are on the roof of the house, and Mark says, "I am the king of this castle," and Jesse says, "I am his queen." Mark says that he will burn this place to the ground before he lets any of them back in. Jesse calls them parasites as she flicks the lighter. All of a sudden, the police from last night have shown back up, with the blowed up Jonathan in the back of the car. It's the bald cop and the lady cop again. They ask Mark and Jesse if they're the homeowners here. Mark says, "Yeah, that's right. What are you going to do about it?" Bald cop says on behalf of the PD, he's been authorized to issue an apology for what happened last night. They are prepared to pay for the damages. Jesse asks, "All the damages?" "Yes, ma'am." Mark asks about the criminal investigation. The bald cop says, "Well, there was some talk about pursuing that until we found out our hard evidence was missing." Jesse asks, "What hard evidence?" And the female cop says, "The cat that dropped dead on your lawn, it disappeared from the evidence room." Bald cop says, "There's going to be hell to pay over that one." Mark and Jesse start doing a happy dance on the roof as a white Rolls Royce pulls into the driveway, and it's Bob Grindle. They come off the roof, and Grindel says he's been looking all over for him. Mark says he's had it with loudmouth bullies like you. Grindel says the Navy dropped the fraud charges. Mark says, you want to fire me? Go ahead and fire me. Hydrolux went up 157 points. Mark keeps going, you know what your problem is? Grindel says I made a bundle because you hung in there. Mark calls him the worst kind of arrogant, small-minded. Grindel says he wants Mark to come work for him. Mark calls him a putz. Grindel says he'll double his salary, and Mark says, screw you. Grindel says, all right, triple. Mark says, screw you, blue. All right, senior vice president at 4 times your present salary, and that's his final offer. Yep, that's okay. Mark says, let me tell you something, asshole. Jesse slaps the back of Mark's head and tells him to shut up. Mark tells him we'll think about it. Grindel says, great. You're kind of hardball's what I've been looking for. Grindel tells Max, you and me are going to make millions. And this sends up the gold digger radar from Claudia. She walks over, introduces herself to Grindel as his wildest dreams come true, darling. We cut over to Dale, who's hitting on the female officer, and he says the Lotus is the car of the future. And when his insurance kicks in, he's going to be back on Easy Street. But in the meantime, he's wondering if she may have some room for him and his wonderful kids to come stay with her. The female cop goes, maybe. Katie is right now doing a back bend on the cruiser, and CK says, Dad, I don't want to live with some cop. The cop smacks CK in the back of the head and asks if he wants to eat Brussels sprouts 3 meals a day, punk. We cut to Fred. We cut, to I think the later that day, and Fred in his newish car. It's an older car, but he yells for Bernice, "Yo, baby, chop, chop!" She comes out bitching, saying he said he was going to change, but he's not, and basically starts her shit again. And Fred tells her, "Bernice, remember what we practiced." And Bernice says, "No yapping." And she starts to yap again, and Fred just basically puts his hand in her mouth and goes, psh, 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 like does that waving thing and like to tell her to shut up. From behind, the fucking cat is back with an evidence tag on him. Bernice gets excited when she sees Scruffy, but he growls at her and hops into Jesse's arms. Jesse says he doesn't seem to want to go with you. Mark says by his calculations, Scruffy has 5 lives left, and he's welcome to spend the rest of them with them. Bernice tries to take him again, and he slashes at her, and she calls him a traitor as she bends over to put things in the car. Both Mark and Fred whack her in the ass, and she seems to have liked it. Fred says if you guys ever get to New Jersey, and Mark says we'll stay at the Holiday Inn. Fred and Bernice pull off with Tiny in a trailer behind them. Mark and Jesse have their house back. They walk back inside. Mark clears all of Bernice's shit off the bed, all the metal things that were holding Bernice up. Throws Jesse down on it, and just as he's about to kiss her, the toilet goes off again. Mark says he'll be back, and he takes a sledgehammer to the toilet, destroying it. And then the words, Mark Bannister went on to high-profile success with Grindel Unlimited. Jessie Bannister's nervous breakdown on the air led to record ratings and a series of her own called Over the Edge. They bought a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath with a fireplace and a view in Malibu, where they lived happily ever after until their parents came to visit. Roll credits. That's Madhouse. And we have gone way longer than I wanted to. Real quick, let me get down here. The movie was released February 16th, 1990. Filming location was in Phoenix, Arizona. It grossed in U.S. actually grossed U.S. and Canada and worldwide $21,036,000 and $21,036,771. Opening weekend in U.S. and Canada, it made $5,240,816. Let's see. Let's do some trivia real quick. John Larroquette was approached for this film while working on the 6th season of Night Court, but the show's executive producer would not allow Larroquette the time off to make the film. Because of delays in the film, Larroquette was approached again during the 7th season of Night Court. This time, the show's producer and the film's producers worked out a schedule that would allow Larroquette to work on both projects simultaneously. Monday to Thursdays, Larroquette would rehearse for the series during the day, work on the film at night. On Friday nights, the series would tape their episodes. As soon as taping finished, he would go to the film set and work all weekend. Dr. Jack Penix, OBGYN. OBGYN's voice is the real Dr. Jack Penix, DDS. Dennis Miller's feature film debut. John Larroquette and John Deal both appeared in Stripes. I forgot John Larroquette was in Stripes. Although it's a comedy, the movie makes reference to 2 horror movies with a cat coming back to life scene from Pet Sematary and the dead zombies wanting to stay at their house dream sequence from Night of the Living Dead. Kirstie Alley and John Larroquette played alien characters in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. The movie features actors who were on hit NBC TV shows during the 80s and 90s with John Larroquette in Night Court, Kirstie Alley in Cheers, John Deal in Miami Vice, and Dennis Miller on Saturday Night Live. And let's see, that's about all there. Let me see if anything else interesting. Nope, that's about it. So, moving on to reviews. I love this movie still. It's a movie I grew up watching. So I don't know how fair it would be for me to rate it. But my question is, does it hold up? As somebody who hasn't watched it in a while, I still giggled at a few things, but I didn't laugh anywhere near as much as I did back in the 90s. In the 90s, I would have given this probably over 4 stars, like 4.5 stars. I can keep it at a reasonable 3.75 stars, honestly. Like I said, I knew it was going to happen and everything, so it's a little harder to rate it when I watched the movie a bunch. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't laugh as much as I did when I was a kid, but it's still a great movie. It still holds up. If you want to watch it, it is on Tubi for free, so go check it out, and you'll laugh at it. I think you'll laugh. I can't really. That's the thing about doing comedies on a podcast like this, is I can't really do the jokes and make people laugh as much as you can watching the movie. But guys, again, thank you for joining me. Next week, like I said, we're going to do a Thanksgiving horror movie. I haven't decided which one yet, so keep a lookout on the pages. Here in a week or two, I think we're going to be doing. I got to talk to Raz and Matt. I think we're going to be doing another Hardcore Heels. The next episode of that podcast is going to be the first 3 episodes of Monday Night Raw from 1993. And then after that, at some point next month, for Shivers, we're doing the Dayton Killing Spree, the Dayton Christmas Killing Spree, from 1992. Very sad, very tragic, very interesting story. The first time I'm going to try a true crime story. Hopefully I can pull it off. But guys, you can find me, of course, everywhere at the Bloody Binge Movie Podcast, on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. You can always download audio-only episodes of the podcast anywhere Spreaker puts out their podcasts. Which is like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio Podcasts, and places like that. You can find me on Twitch, but I haven't really done Twitch in a while. Sewer Dweller 78 is what I am on Twitch. And from what I'm hearing, Twitch is having some ad issues right now, some issues with some anti-Semitism. So I don't know how far that's going to go, or Twitch might even exist here in a month or so. I have not joined Blue Sky. I don't know if I'm going to join Blue Sky or not. It kind of just seems silly when Twitter exists, and to go out and do another social media website. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But guys, have a great night. Have a great weekend. Tune in next week. I hope everybody, if you don't get to tune in again, hope everybody has a pleasant holiday. And guys, as always, keep watching horror movies.